Okay, can you all hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. I'm off. Thank you. We'll wait a few more minutes, see who else shows up. Wait for Eli to get in.
Yeah, Zoom.
Yeah, I'm in. I just
better.
didn't have my video on.
All right. Well, that's not a big crowd. Gabe, any sense anybody else coming?
Now, what you see is what you get here. We got 17 participants.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay, let me see. I'm probably got fix my view here. There we go. I just didn't see everybody. All right, so it's 6:05 and I'm going to call to order the Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 Trinidad City Council meeting. And our first order is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could find a place to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. At your own pace. All right. We have nothing to report out of the closed session with the city attorney. We also discussed the city manager's evaluation, and we will be reviewing in June, possibly looking at a contract at that time. We need to do the approval of the agenda. So are there anyone have any changes they'd like to make on the council? No. I'm going to suggest that we take number 10, which is the budget, and move it up to number 4 so we have time to think about it. People can listen to it instead of having it right at the end.
I'll go for that. Do you need somebody to make a motion to do that, or you just?
Yeah, we need to we need to decide to move it. So are there any other changes besides that? All right, then, yeah, David, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion that we move number 10 on the discussion items to number 4 and then accept the agenda as amended.
Before we go on, do we have anybody on the public that wishes to make any changes to the agenda?
I did want to ask if I think it was 8 and 9 for it's the drinking water committee. I was wondering if the mayor was going to be involved, or if that could be postponed possibly.
I'm not sure. I'm going to say right now that I'm being the mayor tonight because our mayor is not here. So Steve Ladwig will not be here for the meeting. So this is Galaxy, right? Yeah.
Ashley.
I'm sorry.
Ashley.
Ashley. Ashley, I don't know which number sorry, I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
9, I think. Discussion.
Is it?
She's talking about 8 and 9 for the Water Advisory Committee.
Oh, okay, because of the letters of interest?
Yes. Yes.
And why do you want to put them off for a meeting?
I was just made aware of it later in the evening yesterday, and when I talked to the people in the community, they had no idea about it because of Mother's Day weekend, and they definitely wanted to be involved. And now that it's Mother's Day weekend, a lot of them have gone on vacation or respite. Yeah, I just kind of felt like we didn't have a really authentic number of people really getting in on this conversation and being a part of it.
One of the issues for this is that we really need to get this thing going quickly. I hate to put it off. Eli, what do you think of this? Any change on this?
Yeah, Personally, I just felt since it's only appointments to the committee, that, you know, it's something that could be done if the council felt that they had enough applicants. But since there's no real business that's going to be done other than appointing people to the committee.
I'm concerned that we want to get things started, but the other thing is, remember that this is going to be public, open to the public. So anyone may attend the meetings and be able to comment. I'm kind of concerned that we need to get this underway. I think maybe we can get to it and make a decision at the time. I'd like to get to it and talk it over. We'll see where we want to go with this. Actually, I think we'll keep it on for now. So let's, and actually feel free to make a comment when we come to it about what you'd like to see. All right. So we have
Can I say something?
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Anita Thompson. This was on the agenda in March.
Yes. That's why I think
It's
we
been
can
on
get,
the agenda since March, and it was on the agenda in April, and it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
in May.
yeah,
Thank
I'd like to get this going. So we'll talk about it when we get to that subject and we can make a comment at that time. So we have a motion. David, you made a motion, I believe.
Yes, I did.
So do you have a second for that? Okay, we got Richard second. We need to go on, Gabe, I think we're gonna have to account on each of these. So could you do that, please?
Yes, sir. So we've got a motion, Grover, second, Columbus, to approve the agenda as amended, moving number 10 up to number 4. We'll start with Councilmember Columbus.
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Grover,
Yes,
and West.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we're gonna look at the minutes from 4/13/2021. All right. Any of the councilmen have a comment or change in the minutes?
I do.
Tom?
Page 5, under item number 1, discussion regarding moratorium. I believe my comment was, it is unfortunate we didn't get this advice at the prior meeting, as the word moratorium was in the title of the agenda item. Not that it's unfortunate that the word moratorium was in the agenda title.
Gabe, are you okay with that?
Yeah, you say it's on page 5, Tom?
Page 5, under action item 1.
Oh. excuse me. Back to page 5.
You want me to?
Oh, I found it. Yeah. So go ahead. Tell me again.
I believe I said it is unfortunate we didn't get this advice at the prior meeting, as the word moratorium was in the title of the agenda item
Okay.
in March.
Okay. I
All
got
right.
it.
Okay, thanks. Any other changes in the minutes for me? Richard? Okay, I have none. Anybody in the public that saw something they think needs to be changed? All right, I just don't see anybody. So could we have
I'll
a
make
motion
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes
with
as
change?
amended.
Second.
All right, first and a second, Gabe.
Sorry, who was the second?
Tom.
Okay. Okay, so we got a motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended. We'll start with Councilmember Columbus,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Grover,
Yes,
and West.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, we're into the council member reports, and Tom, I have you first on my list. You got any reports today?
Yeah, so the Trinidad Trails Committee met April 20th, and we discussed trail signage, general trail signage, the wayside sign on Trinidad Head, and removing the COVID-related barriers and signs at at certain trailheads, or at the selected trailheads that they're already at. So the first item that we talked about was coming up with a generalized trailhead signage. The conversation wasn't directed around interpretive signage. And some of the recommendations were to stay with the existing 4x4 posts. And we would like an inventory taken of the posts that would need to be replaced, because some of them have fallen down, have been knocked over, and replace the needed posts with ones that we understand are possibly in surplus, and wherever the city would be storing these things, in their courtyard or wherever it is. And then a checklist, some sort of a checklist devised for communication as to, when things are inventoried, this has been done, which posts are going to be replaced, etc. When trails have been like looked at for maintenance. And then our second item that we discussed, our recommendation was the COVID signs. We put those up last April or so. They're on street barricades. Some are being used to completely block trailhead entrances. Given the CDC's recommendations more recently for outdoor activity, and the California Department of Public Health, I believe, concurred with them earlier this week, we felt that it would be appropriate to remove the signage. So that's going to be on this agenda tonight. We can have more discussion on that. And then another item that we discussed was there's a sign, an interpretive sign at the top of Trinidad Head, the first bend in the paved road. It's been vandalized and weather worn. The land trust has been working on rewording the signage. We approved of the wording of the signage. They're going to do a little more design, and the land trust will be bringing their proposal for the sign forward. And it was discussed at fairly good length that that since there's a large amount of money that's going to be put into this, fairly large amount of money, we don't want to waste money saying, well, we don't like the wording. And we would hope that the council would accept the recommendation of the membership of the Trails Committee as that the wording is appropriate for the sign. So when it comes forward, it can be approved, and that the city will donate or defray some of the costs for that sign, along with BLM and the land trust. They're getting a grant through the Humboldt Area Foundation. And I think that is the extent of my report.
Thank you. Richard?
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'll try to make this brief. The Indian Gaming Benefits Committee has remained inactive because of a lack of state funds. The California Coastal National Monument Gateway Committee met last month, and there was a meeting May 18th to review their strategic plan, which is updated about every 3 years. The Humboldt County Visitors Bureau has a website that the county has paid for to update, called visitredwoods.com, and organizations within Trinidad have made themselves available to this website to update information about Trinidad. The last point I want to talk about is the Liffenholtz Creek flow measurements and what's going on in California. I understand that the ad hoc water committee is going to go away. Hopefully tonight will be it. And that we will have 2 different water committees. One is a water shortage response team, and the other will be a standing water advisory committee. But I would like to share my screen for just a few minutes. I'm going to see if I can make that happen. Okay. Can everyone see the drought numbers in Humboldt County? Can you see that, Jack?
Not yet, Richard.
Okay. Let's see. Take me just 1 second here. Okay. So. Okay, can you see it now or you can't?
Nothing yet. No, no.
Okay, I'd have to, that's a Mac problem. Okay, well, let me just talk my way through it. In the actual information, which I have in my report, what it indicates on drought.gov is that 100% of people in Humboldt County are affected by the drought. This is the 56th driest February in the past 127 years and the 62nd driest year to date since 127 years that it's been recorded. So we're coming up on a drought condition within the county. 100% of the county is in a moderate drought and 76% is in a severe drought. So with Eli, the city manager's help, and the public works director, Ryan Desmond, I was able to get a flow meter reading for Liffenholtz Creek. That is our only source of water flow. And on May 7th, that flow rate was 2 cubic feet per second. Now, to put that in perspective, last year in June, which is a month later than May, the flow rate was over 3 cubic feet per second. So we're almost a month and a half into the dry season, so to speak, looking at that flow rate. So I just want to really reiterate that the water shortage response team and the advisory water committee is going to be very, very important for the city of Trinidad. We don't really have much room for error, and we don't have a lot of time to waste in order to make some necessary steps to provide more water resiliency. Whatever that committee will recommend, I wholeheartedly support for the city. But I just want to make sure that people are aware that we're entering a drought year. And the governor just yesterday, on May 10th, declared a drought emergency for most of California, including Humboldt County. This highlights the deterioration of California's water supply. The governor also announced a $5.1 billion proposal to invest in drought preparedness and infrastructure to help at-risk rural communities to improve the reliability of water supplies, infrastructure, and response to ensure a more resilient water system. So hopefully, if that proposal is passed by the state legislature, it may mean that funds might be available to help the small city of Trinidad with their water system. So again, I thank everyone for your time, and just wanted to just reiterate the importance of trying to work toward water resiliency for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Dave, it's your turn.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, everyone. Let's see, this is a matter of transparency. I've thrown my hat into the Green Party of California as one of the delegates there, and possibly the co-chair for the state Green Party. I'm looking forward to that. I have a friend in the Environmental Protection Agency that's got me really involved with that platform. So a lot of the perspectives I'm coming from can be shown through that. As for my committee assignments as a council member, I was able to attend the Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting on the board of directors. The ratio subcommittee had a meeting. We're going to continue that. Matters that are happening now, from the federal to the local level, have to be addressed. But what I was really looking forward to, we started the offshore wind subcommittee. So I got to go to 2 subcommittee meetings for that, and that's moving ahead probably quicker than people thought now. There is going to be funding for that, and energy procurement and distribution in our area could be the next big thing, and it's going to be sustainable, and it's going to be inclusive too. So we're trying to do things. A lot got messed up down at Bear River with those wind turbines and stuff because people weren't brought along during the process. So we're trying to do this right now, and taking the proper steps to come up with some good policy. So that's all I have to report right now. And I'm always open to accept emails for people. I've gotten a couple of the constituency has been involved and talked to me, and I appreciate that, because then I get to know where other people are at with this. So that's all I have to report. Thanks.
All right, thank you, David. I'm just going to make a brief report on HCOG, and that is it. We've talked about the Indianola overpass in the past is something that is in the future, and it looks like we're going to actually see groundbreaking occur in spring 2022. That's in theory a possibility, maybe, but they're on their way to do that. Last chance grade this summer. Look forward to maybe having some public input if you'd like to find out how this is going. They expect to have, I believe they're going to have all the studies done for which route they're going to take by the fall. So we may be hearing which way they're going to put the highway fairly soon, because they're way over budget. They're still having all kinds of issues up there. There's a complete streets program that is going to redo Broadway, hopefully all the way from one end to the other. If you haven't seen some of the pictures and some of the material they have up on the web, it's really looks pretty fantastic. It's a big deal. And they're working on the southern section. On April 30th, they had their meeting to try to get the southern section taken care of. And next, the middle and northern section, they haven't got the money secured yet, but hopefully they will. So we may see some big changes in some of the roads in our area over the next not too many years. I think that's all I have. So I believe we're ready to go on and hear what the staff reports from Eli and if there's any law enforcement today.
Yeah, I'll turn it over first to law enforcement. So we have Lieutenant Kevin Miller from the Sheriff's Office.
Eli, you're always so kind to let me go first. Thank you, sir. All right, well, let's start out with April statistics here. So in the greater Trinidad area, the Sheriff's Office, we responded to 198 calls for service. 21 reports were taken. There were 2 arrests made. There were 10 felony investigations conducted and 9 misdemeanor investigations. We had 1 assault, 2 domestic violence calls, 10 vehicle or building burglaries, which is actually down 41% from March. The numbers here: 4 thefts, 8 general disturbances, 2 trespasser or prowler calls, and we responded to 10 alarms, 11 patrol checks, 5 pedestrian checks, 5 suspicious vehicle calls, 9 unwanted subjects, and conducted 6 traffic stops and responded to 123 miscellaneous calls for service. So again, as I say every time, that's everything else is not covered in all these other specific crime sections. Just kind of looking at this overall, it seems like the numbers are down from March, which is good. And then the only other real thing that I had to report out is that Mad River Rotary has collected some funds and donated them. I shouldn't say donated, but they've had a number of signs made up, which are working with us and placing on the along the beaches to kind of just warn folks to not leave valuables in their cars and to lock their cars. Just kind of as a reminder, the plan I think with them is to have these signs put up at trailheads leading down to the beaches and in some of the more frequent areas that we're experiencing vehicle burglaries, or that historically we've experienced vehicle burglaries. So that's very nice of them, and that actually will be a good addition. I think this is a project that's been in the works for way too long, and it finally came around to take effect. So that's my report.
Thank you, Lieutenant Miller. Appreciate that. Sounds like a good program coming up. Any questions for our Lieutenant Miller? All right, Eli, I guess you're on then. Thank you.
Okay, I first want to note that all the stats that Lieutenant Miller gave are for the greater Trinidad area. So I just want to make sure that people are aware it's not just within our city limits. So, but still,
Yes,
we are concerned about all of, any kind of crime in the general area, because it affects all of us. Okay, so as far as the city manager's report, I do have that in the council packet. And I did want to note, number one, about the downtown pedestrian connectivity project, which is currently going on along Trinity Street and a little bit on Patrick's Point Drive. So that has been going on for approximately 3 weeks now. This is the beginning of the 4th week. Hopefully, most of it will be wrapped up by Memorial Day. So we are hoping to get most of it done so that this way, as the visitors start streaming into town, then we don't have too many people, affected between the streets and where the visitors would be going. So the project is being done by REO Construction. They've been cooperating very well with staff, and their work has been progressing at a fairly good pace. And the sidewalk improvements are basically being done because of ADA requirements, so that if someone's using a wheelchair and they're going along the sidewalk, they have a minimal slope, so that this way they can easily control their wheelchair rather than the wheelchair being sloped on the sidewalk and ends up going towards the street. And then as far as the cell towers that we have, the update from Verizon for the second tower that they're placing in West Haven, they were hoping that, or planning on construction to begin last month, but they ended up having some foundation issues that they needed to address, and that delayed the start. But according to Verizon and their general contractor, they said that they're starting the site work this week. They will generally be done with the tower tentatively by the end of September, and then the fiber will be delivered and put in place, and that will be by November, end of November. So that's their current plan. And of course, we've highlighted to them the fact that we want to make sure that service levels remain well. And as a result, before they turn off any of the existing tower, that they would check and make sure that the new tower, along with the one on the Quarry Road, the two of them would be functioning and providing adequate service to the community. As far as the city council, I do want to note 2 things that you could participate in if you wish. Number one, I was notified today by Sarah Sanders, who is our representative to the League of California Cities for the Redwood Empire, which the city of Trinidad is part of the Redwood Empire division. And they have a Zoom meeting tomorrow morning with Assembly Member James Wood, and that will take place at 10:30 in the morning tomorrow. So if any council members want to join, I will be on there, but if you want to join, let me know and I'll send you the link. The second thing with the League of California Cities Redwood Empire Division, they're meeting quarterly, and the next quarterly meeting will be Friday, May the 21st from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. So if you are interested in attending on Friday, May 21st from 1 to 3, Senator Mike McGuire will be giving an update from the state. He'll have like about a half-hour period. And then Lauren Perhoda of Caltrans will provide an update on the road charge pilot program. That's the program where they're trying to modify the gas tax so that it would take in consideration the fuel, the electric vehicles. So currently with the gas tax, the electric vehicles aren't paying any kind of tax. And so this road charge pilot program will also be addressed at the Redwood Empire Division meeting on the 21st. So if the council, any council members interested in attending that Redwood Empire Division meeting, let me know and I'll send you the contact. Okay, so that's the end of my report. If you have any questions, I'll entertain those.
Are there any questions from the council? Yes, Richard.
Yes. Yes, Eli. So AT&T, I understand, removed their transmission tower from the head. And on a good day, I get 1 bar, sometimes 2 bars where I live. If there's an issue with getting adequate cell connectivity, what do residents do? Do they reach out directly to AT&T? What is the recommended contact point to communicate if the AT&T service is less than what it used to be?
Yeah, you are right. The best way to do it is to contact AT&T directly and indicate that your service level is poor. And hopefully whoever has AT&T in the greater Trinidad area could contact them and hopefully put a little pressure on them. They were one of the towers that we had at Trinidad Head, Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon. The only one remaining is Verizon. And Sprint really doesn't serve our area anyway. They just had a tower for people, I guess, traveling through the area who were from other places. But AT&T and Verizon and US Cellular are the 3 main carriers that we have. And I was very concerned because originally AT&T said that they would, in addition to the Quarry Road cell tower that they placed near the Verizon cell tower, that they would co-locate with Verizon in West Haven. But after, like, I guess they were in touch with Verizon for a while and saw that the project was taking a while. And so they just decided that they were not going to connect there. They said, we think we have adequate service. And I've told them that residents are concerned. My contacts, the ones who were in charge of placing the first tower and co-locating with Verizon. And they just said that their new corporate philosophy was that they would replace one tower with another tower. So when they had the one on the one on Trinidad Head, they said they replaced it with Quarry Road, and that was it, that they would do one replacement for another. So I agree with you. The service from talking to a few people, because we do have a couple other people that I am in touch with, another council member and also one of our staff members that has AT&T, and their service has been basically, like you said, 1 or 2 bars. That's why I'm insisting on Verizon that once they get the second tower done, first one's Quarry Road, the second replacement tower is West Haven, that they make sure that the service level is equal to or better than what we have now before they turn off Trinidad Head. Because I wanted to make sure that we had at least one really good viable option in our community. And at the same time, I agree with you. If we could put a little pressure on AT&T, but I think they will hear better from their customers. Unfortunately, these conglomerates are so large that it takes a lot of people. And if we were, LA or San Francisco and the residents started complaining, they would hear us much quicker than, Trinidad and the greater Trinidad area. So because I believe the rest of Humboldt County is receiving adequate service. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the council? Any other questions from members of the community? Anybody else? Okay, then we're moving on to items from the floor. At this time, members of the public may comment on items not appearing on the agenda. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments should be directed to the council as a whole and not to individual council members or staff.
I got
Al?
point of order. Don't we have to accept the consent agenda? We have to make a motion.
We already, I think that comes up next for our consent agenda. All right. Okay with that?
That's correct.
Yes, you're right, Jack.
Okay, let's go on then. And anyway, the council and staff responses will be minimal for non-agenda items. Is there anyone that has some items they'd like to talk about that are not on the agenda? You'll need to speak up or show me. I don't have
Good evening, Vice
Great.
Mayor. This is Katrin Homan. Can you hear me?
Yes,
At the January meetings, Supervisor Madrone submitted false, misleading, and harmful information about my family's project. None of it was correct except for the location. He stated an 18-acre property on Stagecoach Road near College Cove was proposed as an 18-parcel subdivision. According to him, each 1-acre parcel would have had one well and a septic system, and the residents would literally be pooping into each other's water source. The development was reduced to 9 2-acre parcels. He then speculated that with water, the parcel density could have doubled. In actuality, our 19-acre property was proposed as a 9-parcel subdivision with only 4 new wells. After receiving community input, my husband and I reduced our development to 6 parcels with 3 new wells. Residents pooping in each other's water source? I understand this is Supervisor Madrone's field of expertise, but please remember that his theory is based on inaccurate data. No amount of expertise can reach a correct conclusion when incorrect data is used in the analysis. When the supervisor speculated that water was the only restrictive element, he seemed to have no knowledge of our extensive well testing data. He did not consider the geology, environment, biology, wildlife, trees, neighboring properties, the beauty and the layout of the land, and more factors. At no point during our project was water quantity an issue. Supervisor Madrone seems insensible to my concerns, and he is proclaiming that he didn't mention any names, only his details of the project. You council members, your staff, the attendees of your meetings are smart and pay attention. In our small community, naming the location is sufficient to identify a project, especially when it has been the only subdivision in that area for decades. I like to remind that location was the only detail Supervisor Madrone had right in his description of our project. I am hoping with your help, a note can please be posted with Supervisor Madrone's letter in your document library. It is extremely stressful to have false, misleading, hurtful statements submitted by Supervisor Madrone on official county letterhead in the city's public library. Also, I find it upsetting and discouraging that false, misleading information about my project was used in an effort to influence your governing decision-making process. Thank you very much.
thank you, Katrine. And is there anyone else who has a comment or an item from the floor?
Yes, hi, this is Aaron Hakinen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm at work, so I'm not sure how long I'll be able to be with you. Just a request with the upcoming tourist season, and I'm not sure if this has been done in the past, but as a relatively new member of the community, speed on our city streets is, I'm sure, been a long-standing issue. I'd be curious if the city has access to, through our contract with the county, any kind of speed control signs, the radar signs that we put up temporarily. I know I can speak on View Avenue that it's a major bypass coming down from Murphy's, and the speed on that street is frequently much faster than the posted 15, and it goes on other streets. And I won't belabor the point, but I just like us to try and get ahead of this and do something with that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. We'll look at it. Anybody else have a comment at this time?
Yes, I do. This is Jackie Hostler, Carmison.
Hi, Jackie. You're on.
Hi. How are you, Jack?
I'm good. Glad you're speaking up for us. Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to speak to the staff or the council report from Councilman Davies regarding the Trails Committee. And I've just recently been made aware on behalf of the Tribal Council that there is language recommended for the sign at the trailhead. And the chairman and the council do have some significant concerns about the language. So we will be submitting a letter with recommended edits and requesting that there be direct government to government consultation regarding that signage. So I did hear Councilman Davies indicate that it was the committee's hope that it would move forward. I'm not sure if you would move it forward from the committee to the council and then take the government to government request. But I'm open for whichever way you want to do that.
Okay, thank you. That'll be considered. And all right, we'll move on to anyone else have something you'd like to add? Steve Madrone, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. First of all, let me start out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I want to congratulate you all on finally moving to the Zoom platform. I hope you're enjoying it. I think it's an excellent platform. I know the signal is certainly working better for me. I hope it's working better for all you and others, but welcome to Zoom. And I also want to congratulate everybody for keeping their audio on mute because that really helps a lot during the conversation. So kudos to everybody here. Secondly, let me make a formal apology to Katrin Holman and her family for the misinformation that I put out. So let me clarify. I did state that there were 18 parcels. That was wrong. There were only 9. What I was remembering was that there was 9 parcels with 2 houses per parcel. So there could have been the potential for 18 houses. And that's where I came up with the number for 18. The project was reduced from 9 parcels to 6 parcels. And that had a lot to do with water supply, not the quantity of water available, but when you try to put a lot of houses on a dense area and everybody's using a well and they're also using septic systems, you can get into problems with polluting those septic systems. I appreciate that Katrin recognized my expertise as a hydrologist, 45 years as a watershed restorationist. I did evaluate all the geology and hydrologic reports for the project, and my conclusion was that 9 parcels with a potential of 18 houses was going to be too dense, and that the septic systems could easily pollute some of the wells. I still stand by that, but again, I apologize for stating that there was 18 parcels. It was only 9, but there is 18 potential homes. You can go back and reference Patty Stern's letter when all the comments were coming in regarding alternative water supplies with Humboldt Bay and Mad River. And Patty laid out a very detailed explanation as a local real estate agent with tremendous expertise in local real estate. And she laid out for you all at incredible detail all the potential development that could occur in our area, not necessarily in Trinidad, but especially in the surrounding areas, if in fact we had a pipeline. So I stand by what I said in terms of the impact on the community of extending a line up here and having unlimited water and the impact that could have on the community. But again, let me close by saying, I apologize to you, Katrin, and your husband for any misstatements that I made, but I hope that you can see that the elements of what I was trying to say are still basically true. So anyway, I hope that puts a rest to that. I know you're probably all tired of hearing it, but I thought, let me just make a public apology. We all make mistakes. I made one there. I don't think it changes the substance of what I was trying to get across. At any rate, I hope that helps. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any other items from the floor? I don't see any of their hands up.
Hi,
Trevor?
Jack. I just wanted to mention real quick in relation to some of the staff reports. I am working on a water shortage ordinance to implement the water shortage plan. So just wanted to let you guys know that I'm trying to make that a priority so that I can get that to you guys in time to implement later this summer.
Thank you. All right, great. Anyone else? I don't see any hands, so I think we're ready to move on to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda is considered routine by the city council and enacted in one motion. No separate discussion of any of these items unless we move one to the discussion agenda item. Is there anything in the consent agenda that the council wishes to move at this time? Anybody in the community that would like to make any move of the consent agenda? All right, I don't see any. So could we have a motion for the consent?
Yes, I'll make that motion. I want to apologize before. I'm using my phone here and I scrolled down and just kind of skip out. But I will make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Any second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Richard? Gabe, if you could do a count, please.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Grover Clompus to approve the consent agenda as submitted. We'll start with Councilmember Clompus,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Grover,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, we are into the discussion agenda items. And our first discussion agenda item is the decision regarding a revised government to government consultation policy with Native American tribes. And Eli, are you going to start this, or you go right, or we'll go right to our attorney?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we've been working on this for a while. The last time we had it on the agenda was January 26th. We had requested input from the community and from the Native American tribes. And we wanted to bring it hopefully closer to closure so that this way the council and the city and staff know, what would be the proper policy whenever we have a request, such as the Churai management team, such as meeting with the Trinidad Rancheria, and such as meeting with the Yurok tribe. So I'll turn it over to our attorney, Russ Gantz, who has been working on this policy.
Yes, thank you, Eli. So as the council will recall, we've gone through multiple iterations of this policy, and we've tried to keep it relatively streamlined. The most recent version incorporates additional changes requested by the council at the previous meeting, including those of Councilmember Davies, as to not referencing any particular tribe in the preamble. So again, we've tried to incorporate the comments from interested members of the community that have submitted comments relative to the policy over time. And I would note, in essence, this is just a general guidance policy to kind of facilitate encouraging government-to-government consultation requests, while at the same time notifying a requesting tribe of the council's obligation to, in essence, meet in public and conduct public agendized meetings relative to the majority of issues. The policy does also create a mechanism where staff would be appointed for confidential site-specific related issues that an affected tribe may have concern about revelation. So again, it's kind of a general policy. It's not addressed to, not tailored or drafted to address any specific issue germane to any tribe or, for example, the Shrine Ancestral Society. It's not drafted to address any specific issue that the council or the city may encounter. It's simply a general overall policy statement, kind of facilitate government-to-government consultations while at the same time recognizing the council's obligation to comply with the California open meeting laws. So unless there's questions for the council, would go ahead and recommend that solicit public comment. There have been a number of comments that I've received copy of from members of the community that may wish to address.
Let's start. Anybody on the council want to have any questions or comments?
I do.
Richard?
Yes. Russ, I just want to make sure that if you've received feedback from the Yurok tribe, the Trinidad Rancheria, the Churai Ancestral Society, have each of those entities given you any feedback based on the current proposal?
This specific proposal, none of those entities had commented. They had previously commented, and we sought to incorporate requested revisions within the policy. In fact, some of those revisions were removed. For example, the preamble had the recital, the last draft had the recital as to close proximity to the rancheria recited. That was removed at the council's request, but no specific comments from those specific entities since publication of this revised policy with Friday's agenda.
Okay, my question really is if this is the latest framework, and I appreciate the work on this because I'd love to get our meetings going, is it better from a relationship perspective to allow each of the Native American tribes to comment on this, or is the concept this is the final version, we either accept it or reject it?
Yeah, the proposal tonight is to actually get the policy in place. So again, we've sought to incorporate those comments, multiple comments that have been received. Again, I believe this is the third or fourth time this has been on the council's agenda. And again, what is proposed is kind of a very, in my opinion, relatively generic policy statement whereby we're going to facilitate these consultation requests while at the same time let any requesting tribe know that in some circumstances, the council or an ad hoc committee of the council will have to meet in a public forum to avoid the open meeting law violation concerns, which had been an issue historically.
Richard, any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And any other council member like to ask? Yeah, Tom?
Yes, Russ, I'm referring to the comments made specifically by Richard Harris. Do you see any substantial reason why those comments could not be incorporated?
Russ, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Now, as to Mr. Harris's comments, no, his are kind of a general policy statement. Again, I believe the principal concerns raised by him are adequately addressed in the policy, and that this is a very protective policy in terms of government facilitation and open meeting facilitation. So this policy is drafted such that the city council will recognize its obligations to meet in a public forum for the majority of those issues, except really site-specific sensitive issues, which would be directed at a staff level. So I believe the general tenor of those concerns have been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
David, did you have a comment or question?
No, I'd like to hear any public comments from some of our more learned constituents.
I agree with that. So we have time for public comment. Please help me out. Bryce, are you?
Good evening, friends and neighbors, and thank you once again for performing this super important civic duty that you agreed to take on. I'm always grateful every time we have a meeting like this. And I want to commend the city attorney for all the really good work he's done on this policy. I've been following this from the very beginning and have put in literally scores of hours on this myself. And it's a tough, very tough terrain to negotiate, balancing the interest here and all the different statutes that you have to read and everything. So my hat's off to him for that really good job. I did talk with Richard Harris a little about his proposed revisions, and I think I agree with that those few little changes could just eliminate a little bit of ambiguity that might still remain and make it a little bit more effective document in the future. But all in all, I think it was a really good job. If anyone does want to move to incorporate those changes, I think you could do that by just referencing his Exhibit 1 to his letter of May 10th, 2021, and then those could be incorporated if that's the pleasure of the council.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Well, let's get some more public comment, come back to that. So Jackie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Jack, Trinidad Rancheria would respectfully request that this go out to the tribes one more time. While we did comment on previous drafts, we have not seen this draft until it was posted in the packet. And while at first glance, I think everyone has done a really great job, formally it does need to go to the tribal council. And I would request that it be delayed until the next meeting for comments. I do believe that there has been great effort, and I really appreciate that. But I think the city needs to understand that they should go out and request comments on each iteration, on each draft. So with that, thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Jackie. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this? Richard, go ahead.
Thank you, Council. I had 3 very brief comments, and I show the comments on the Exhibit 1 there at page 2, page 3, and page 4. At page 2, there's an ambiguity as to whether the notice only goes to the tribes or whether it's to both the public and the tribes. And I believe the intent is that it is to both. But you see where on Exhibit 1 I've shown that language, and that's for you and your council to decide. The third point at page 4, I think there was a mistake. There was because I think the way it is drafted, the notice would only go to the Indian tribes that are identified by the state agency rather than to all tribes. And the language is very confusing, very detailed, and I think that the correction that I provided, I think, is probably your intent, that this apply to all tribes. The third comment is at page 3. The phrase ad hoc committee does not appear in the Brown Act. It appears in a few other places. Some Attorney General commentary will sometimes refer to it as ad hoc. The Brown Act itself calls that an advisory committee, and I think to make yourself consistent, you should just add the word advisory, and then I give you another phrase that specifies a 4-day notice. Very simple. You get to make your decisions, and you have excellent counsel who has gone through this very carefully, as have I and Bryce. There you go. Thank you very much for your work, counsel.
Thank you, Richard. Russ, you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember West. So just briefly, all of Mr. Harris's comments do appear well stated. There is a little confusion here. I did receive a message from Mr. Harris yesterday, May 10, but it looks like we have potentially the wrong attachment was appended to his message. I received a copy of his December 9, 2020 letter and assumed, of course, he was restating that, but looks like he's drafted an Exhibit 1. I don't have a copy of that, but it looks like in that he articulates these suggested revisions, just what he states orally. They all seem to be sensible and likely could be incorporated in the policy. So, I would like to look at the actual exhibit he submitted to the city to try and incorporate those.
Make sure you get that. Thank you.
I apologize for that. I thought I sent it. I'll resend it. Apologize.
Thank you, Richard. Well, make sure you get that.
It's on the city's document library under public comments right now.
All right. Well, obviously that will be looked at by our attorney. So thank you for the ideas. They'll definitely be considered. So let's move on. Is there anybody else who has a comment on this document? I don't see anyone, so unless you quickly let me know, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Looks like we're back to the council. So let's begin. Let's get some questions. David, looks like you've got a question.
Not really, just more of a comment. Is that it sounds like that's where we're at, where we're going to let Russ incorporate these suggestions because everybody seems to be in compliance. So are we going to wait for this? Because it's a lot easier, I'm sure, as people have stated, when they get to reread it as it's going to be, supposedly going to be. So is that where we're at with this?
We're going to discuss that right now, and we'll have Russell give us some information. We'll get a couple more comments. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, as much as I'd love to get this completed tonight, I want to be respectful to the Native American tribes and the Churai Ancestral Society to allow them at least have a chance to review it. So perhaps Mr. Gans can incorporate or review Mr. Harris's comments. I did email those to you, by the way, Russ. I just sent them. And then if we could permit the tribes to have exposure to the revised one, and then hopefully the next meeting we can finalize and get it done. But I feel better that we have comments at the final version, and then we can all say, yes, we work together, we put this framework so we can all move forward and not complain about the process. I want the process to be smooth and easy to handle, and everyone agrees this is the best way to proceed. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, do you have any comments on this?
I'll make a motion to direct staff to incorporate Richard Harris's comments from Exhibit 1 to bring back at a subsequent council meeting for approval by the council.
I'll second that.
I just have a question. Do you want to incorporate?
If I could comment, those comments by Richard Harris have been sent to our city attorney. And I think the proper approach is, just to have the city attorney review them and incorporate as he sees fit.
The other question, did you want to incorporate the rancheria's request to be able to see this before the next meeting?
If we don't approve it tonight, it's still online for another month before the next meeting with the recommended changes.
Okay, just to make sure.
And
all right, we have Richard?
Yes, and if it is updated, whether that be this week or next week, I want to make sure that we have a mechanism to send those out to the Yurok tribe, the Trinidad Rancheria, and the Churai Ancestral Society to give them the chance to review it so that when we have the next meeting, hopefully we can finish this up and get it passed.
Russ, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll be sure to get those to everybody. So we now have a motion and a second. So unless there's another comment, we're going to go ahead and take a vote. So doesn't look like it. So go ahead, Gabe.
What's the motion? Can someone?
Tom, go ahead. Can you do it again, please? You're on mute.
Gabe, did you have that down, or do you need it restated?
Yeah, let me take a shot here, Tom, and then you can let me know if it needs to be changed, but I have a motion, but I don't have the second. Can you tell me who?
I seconded it.
Grover? Okay, so motion and a second to direct staff to incorporate Mr. Harris's comments and revisions into a revised draft and return it to the next meeting for discussion and possibly approval. Does that sound right?
Yeah, exhibit 1 from his letter dated, what's the date? I think he sent it today.
5/11.
And I would suggest just adding the word consider. So direct staff consider incorporating, so that this way our city attorney, because he is putting together the totality of the document, and then as he sees fit, I think it'll be very similar, if not identical, but I think it's better to, rather than the council telling staff to go ahead and do it according to what's being proposed by Richard Harris, that we say that staff, meaning the city attorney, would consider what has been submitted by Richard Harris.
To avoid redundancies and things like that, correct?
Tom, before you go, Jackie has one more comment, so we'll let her go and then give you back the floor. Jackie, go ahead.
Thank you, Jack. I just want to reiterate the protocol for going back out to the tribes. And I think that's important in the motion to capture the spirit and the intent of true government to government consultation. I think it's wonderful that the council and their legal are incorporating Mr. Harris's comments. But I think it's important out of respect to the tribes that that also be captured in the motion. Thank you.
Tom, do you want to answer that one? What do you think? Would we like to change a little bit?
Incorporate that when a city attorney makes appropriate revisions, could send out to relevant tribal associations, tribal governments for comment, and receive comment prior to the next meeting, which would be the second Tuesday in June.
Okay. And that would be, go back to David. Do you want to second that one?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll go ahead and second that. Yeah, there was a little, I was trying to think if there was a better way of saying it, but that's pretty good.
Okay. All right. And Russ, you're clear with this? You're feeling good about what we got at that motion?
Yes, I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay, then let's take we got a motion and a second. I think we're ready for our count. Gabe, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, we'll start with Councilmember Klompus,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Rover,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Right, we're going to move on to number 2, which is the presentation discussion regarding the climate action plan. So Eli, I'll let you introduce.
Okay, we have present Connor McGugan from the county, who has been spearheading the climate action plan county-wide. So it affects the county and the 7 cities in the county. And from staff, Trevor Parker, our city planner, has been attending those meetings. And we have Connor present with us today. He has a PowerPoint presentation to basically present to council the climate action plan that's being proposed on a county-wide level. So I'll turn that over to Connor.
Thank you, Eli. Hi, everyone. My name is Connor. I'm a planner, Connor McGuigan. I'm a planner at the County of Humboldt. Yeah, I have a brief presentation for everyone today. It should take about 10 minutes. Hopefully I'm able to share my screen here. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes, that looks good.
Great. What do I go? Slideshow. Okay, so this is, as I mentioned, just a pretty brief update on the climate action plan. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to over the last 2 years with this project, how it interacts with what the different cities are doing and what Trinidad's role could potentially be as the project moves forward. I just covered that. So the goal for this project is a regional climate action plan to be adopted by each jurisdiction to reduce greenhouse gas emissions throughout Humboldt County. And the phrase climate action in this context really refers to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This is a high-level timeline for the project. We launched the Regional Climate Action Plan, which is referred to as CAP a few times in this slideshow. We launched it in 2018, and we got together a group of staff from the 7 cities in the county. I believe the previous city manager and Trevor were involved in that and have been involved in the years since. We're still meeting pretty regularly. And yeah, so one of the first things we did was complete this inventory of greenhouse gases and forecast, which I'll get into in a moment. And as we move along, we're looking to complete the first draft in the next couple of months. So really, I'm here today to sort of prime your council on what to expect. And so you're aware of this project as the draft is being prepared. And ultimately, the final stage here is public hearing and CAP adoption. The goal is for each city, each jurisdiction to adopt its own portion of this regional climate action plan. So ultimately, if we get to that stage with everyone's participation, the city of Trinidad, or say the county of Humboldt, will have complete authority over what's in their specific portion of the gap. This is the 2015 greenhouse gas inventory, and I just want to show you what some of the sources of emissions that we're looking at with this cap. The number one source is transportation, which comes in at 53% of all emissions countywide. And then stationary combustion, which refers to the use of natural gas and propane, primarily energy consumed by residences and commercial buildings. Electricity consumption is also a major source of emissions. And livestock, that is mostly located within the unincorporated areas. Industrial sources, solid waste, and here are some other less significant sources of emissions. This is just a more detailed breakdown of what's in the inventory. The only thing I'd like to point out here are the bottom 4 columns you can see. So it's just a breakdown between first natural gas and electricity, which is sort of interesting, seeing that they're actually fairly comparable in terms of greenhouse gas emissions in Humboldt County, and then a breakdown between gas and diesel use within on-road vehicles. Here's a breakdown of emissions by jurisdiction. So these are all of the jurisdictions that are participating in the Climate Action Plan. I just noticed that Fortuna is missing a label. That's the yellow slice there. And yeah, Trinidad is at 1% of countywide emissions, which is pretty, it's not too far off of Trinidad's population share of the whole county. So it's pretty strongly correlated with population here. And this is a breakdown of emissions 1990 versus 2015. I just wanted to show everyone the columns on the left here. These 2 columns show what happened between 1990 and 2015 in Humboldt County in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. These columns represent the totals with the industrial sources included. And you can see that the drop is pretty significant because many major industrial facilities closed in Humboldt County in between 1990 and 2015. So on to the targets. That's the next kind of, I'm moving through the 3 key elements of a climate action plan. We covered inventories just now, and the second would be a greenhouse gas target. These are the states greenhouse gas targets. 1990 levels means 1990 levels of emissions here. And yeah, it's worth noting that the state has a pretty ambitious goal of reaching statewide carbon neutrality by 2045, basically meaning that all emissions, it's not that no greenhouse gases would be emitted within the state, it's that the state would really try to slash emissions statewide and then try to offset the remaining emissions by carbon sequestration. So that's a really ambitious goal, and it's worth noting that lots of cities and counties have already created climate action plans, and pretty much everyone is having to play a role in this, in the state meeting these exceedingly ambitious, but many would say justified targets. This is the recommended Humboldt County target for our climate action plan. It's in line with the state's 2030 target, 40% below 1990 levels of emissions by 2030. So in the draft climate action plan, which we are preparing now, this is the first draft target that we're using. And last, we have the actual greenhouse gas reduction measures, the actions that the jurisdictions in Humboldt County are going to take to try to reduce emissions. And I didn't want to dive into too many specific measures here. I just wanted to give everyone an overview of what some of the categories are. So land use planning, that would be measures related to, say, updating zoning codes or anything that a local government can do to influence the built environment. And that's relevant because where we live and where we work has an influence on our transportation choices. Another category would be low carbon transportation. So electric vehicles, promoting the use of more alternative forms of transportation like walking, biking, transit. Another category is efficiency of buildings and facilities. So that would be conserving fuel, whether it be electricity or natural gas or propane. Renewable energy generation. So in this category, we're looking at different ways to promote larger scale renewable projects that might come into play for some jurisdictions more than others. And then for every jurisdiction, what's really relevant is, small scale renewable energy like rooftop solar. So there are lots of things that local governments can do to increase the viability of rooftop solar in their jurisdiction. And then waste prevention, reduction, and diversion. And last, carbon sequestration. So these are the different categories that we're looking at with the climate action plan. And I'm excited to come back in a couple months and give everyone a better idea of what the actual actions are. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is something that we've been talking about a lot in some of the jurisdictions that have lots of projects that are coming down the pipeline to be permitted, having to go through the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act process. And it's less, I've gotten feedback that it's less relevant for some of the smaller jurisdictions, but I do want to include a brief discussion on how this climate action plan relates to the California Environmental Quality Act, because it's actually one of the main incentives for making a climate action plan. So this is all basically saying that if you meet the 4 criteria in the bullets, that you can use a climate action plan to streamline the analysis of greenhouse gases through CEQA. So it basically makes it easier for projects, rather than having projects have to calculate emissions on a project by project basis. Having a climate action plan allows for the CEQA process to be more streamlined, essentially. The greenhouse gas portion of the CEQA process. And this is something that we're wrestling with, because in order to have this streamlining take into effect, we would need to have what we're calling a qualified climate action plan. So I think, but really the big takeaway here is that there are two distinct routes that we can take. This is one of the big unanswered questions we have about this project. And if we look at the left column, this is one scenario where we do an environmental impact report, which is kind of one of the more, it's the most involved form of a CEQA review that you can do. So in this scenario, we do an environmental impact report, and we can take advantage of that streamlining that I just described. But at the same time, that comes with a requirement to implement and monitor and update the climate action plan. And another route that could be taken is not doing an EIR, and ultimately in this non-qualified climate action plan scenario, there would be no, other than the fact that it would be a planning document adopted by city councils and the board, there would be no specific requirement to implement or monitor or update the plan. And yeah, that's two distinct possibilities, and I wanted to just call that to your attention. And I'm going to close off by giving you a timeline of what's left with the climate action plan. So right now we're at the third step here: review the administrative draft of the CAP and provide feedback. We're working on the internal draft, and soon we will have a public draft. And at that point, we're going to go host public workshops throughout the county. And I would be happy to come to Trinidad and host a public workshop in collaboration with Eli and your council. So yeah, coordinate public workshops to present the draft of the climate action plan. And then we're moving along to the CEQA process. That's the next big step. So once we have a draft ready, we'll go through CEQA. And then once we make it through the end of the CEQA process, we'll have something like a final draft. And at that point, we would bring it to, say, the Trinidad City Council. Your council would review the Trinidad portion of the climate action plan in a hearing, and that would be the opportunity for each city to formally adopt the plan. So I believe that's all I have for you all today. Thank you for giving me the time to speak, and I'm here to answer any questions that your council or the public has about this project.
All right, thank you, Connor. We're going to have give a chance for the council to ask some questions first. If you could turn your document off, we could see everybody. So I appreciate that. So does anyone on the council have a question for Connor? I don't see. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so if we set up our own climate action plan like this, we can work with like the EPA to set up the functional equivalents of some of these CEQA items that we would have to take the time for review, like we would be able to streamline it because we're getting involved in getting to use the data that has been collected at the regional level.
I was following you. I'm not sure what the specific question is. Sorry, Dave. Could you repeat it?
Just if we develop our own, the sooner we develop our own specific climate action plan for here, we will be able to use like the functional equivalents of the CEQA process more because we're at the regional level and we can exchange the data and more like a networking, because it sounds almost like you're trying, not trying to sell it to us, but trying to show us the benefit of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned another benefit. That's definitely true. So it would be totally an opportunity to collaborate regionally, and yeah.
Any other councilman with a question? I'd like to just know, you're talking about a year possibly coming back to us again, is that right?
Well, we removed the timeline from this, or the dates from that timeline that I showed, because the CEQA part of it, we're not totally sure how long that'll take, but I know for sure that we will have a draft ready in June, and then having public workshops right then. So we'll have more stuff to bring pretty soon.
Okay, is there anyone in the community, anybody else would like to ask Connor a question or have a comment? I don't see any. So Connor, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in and giving us this information. We'll look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks,
Okay, great.
everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, we're on to the next item. That's going to be the discussion decision regarding the interim urgency ordinance 2021-01, placing a moratorium on issuance of new short-term rental licenses in the city of Trinidad. So I think Eli, I can let you start us off, and then we'll get, I believe Russ is going to have some comments.
Okay. So this is dealing with the STRs that we have in the city. And at the last couple of meetings, we were talking about having a moratorium on issuing licenses for STRs to basically fill in the vacancies of any STRs that end up being sold or decide not to be STRs any longer. Russ has put together this ordinance, and in addition to that, we did talk about different options also. So the ordinance is written up as an urgency ordinance, and I'll let Russ explain that portion. But beyond that, we have several options. One option is to limit the moratorium to the two restricted residential zones, which are the UR and the SR zone. And then the unrestricted, unlimited zones of PD and commercial, since the STR ordinance basically was trying to shift some of the STRs away from the residential areas and into those two zones, that a possible option would be to not restrict through the moratorium the PD and commercial zone. So this way, ultimately, as the as the STR ordinance is being revised and reviewed by the Planning Commission, and possibly an overall cap is being placed on the city, then in the long run, the having more STRs in the PD and commercial zone could lessen the number that would be in the SR and in the UR zone. So that's one option. Another option is to use the wait list that currently is provided in the STR ordinance to fill the several vacancies that exist before the ordinance ends up being ratified. Currently, we put a hold, myself as city manager, on filling those vacancies to allow the council time to determine the course they want to proceed on with the moratorium. So one option is to say, okay, any vacancies that existed before we officially approve the moratorium could be filled, but then no more can be filled in the SR and the UR zone, or in all the zones, depending on what the council says. And the third option is basically to ask the Planning Commission to expedite the review and revision of the STR ordinance. So I'm going to turn it over now to Russ Gans, our attorney, and let him walk through the urgency ordinance that has been drafted.
Yes, just briefly, as the council will recall, at the last council meeting, the direction was to prepare an interim urgency ordinance, basically placing a moratorium on filling any outstanding STR licenses and issuing new licenses pending Planning Commission review of the existing ordinance. So what's before you is a draft proposed interim urgency ordinance with a recital of findings to support imposition of the urgency ordinance. And would draw your attention to section 2, which would be the duration of the moratorium. In the land use context, where in essence we're amending an existing zoning ordinance and imposing a moratorium relative to zoning development, land use restrictive ordinance of this nature. It is a limited duration ordinance or moratorium. By state statute, it cannot exceed 45 days from the date of adoption. It can be extended prior to expiration of that 45-day period if the public hearing and notice protocol required by the cited government code sections in section 2 of the draft ordinance are followed. So in short, if you want to adopt this moratorium tonight, you will need to return at your next council meeting and conduct a public hearing, hear from the public regarding moratorium continuance, and follow the notice protocol prior to that public hearing, at which time you can extend it. Basically, I believe it's not to exceed 2 years. I don't have the statute in front of me, but you'd have to follow that, again, notice and public hearing protocol to extend past the 45-day period. And then the other options like are recited in the staff report. There are internal caps, as the council is aware, in the existing STR ordinance. So there's really limited potential for increased STR licenses beyond the cap. All that's really at issue would be filling the two potentially vacant existing vacant STR licenses in the affected zones. But I understand the council's prerogative and the council's concern that the STR ordinance has not been reviewed since adoption within the time period stated in the initial ordinance. So anyway, so we present those options for the council's consideration. And as the council director, we prepared a draft ordinance for council consideration tonight, urgency ordinance.
I also want to note that we have our city planner, Trevor Parker, available. I don't know if she'd like to make some comments now, and then of course both myself, Trevor, and Russell will be available for any questions. So Trevor.
I don't have anything to add at this time.
Okay, so Jack.
Okay, then I'm kind of trying to make this all clear, but we're looking at, one of the possibilities would be to just do a 1 month, hold it for a month, and then we can come back and look at a longer time. And so I think that's what we're saying. So anyway, any questions from the council? Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at option 3 is to request the planning commission expedite a review and revision of the short-term rental ordinance. And I don't know what that means from a timeline perspective. Is that something that the planning commission could do in a month, in 3 months, 6 months? I know they have a lot on their plate with the general plan. And then we have the water shortage issue, which is going to be upon us in the next month or two. So I don't know what is a realistic time frame for option number 3. I'm not sure if anyone can comment on that.
I would defer to
I can-
Trevor on that, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, it's hard to predict. The public review process can be a little bit unpredictable. I was hoping that, I envisioned that the STR committee would sort of go through that process for us. And I thought that's what they were doing, but they haven't really reviewed the ordinance piece by piece per se. So part of it depends on the public interest. Certainly it can't be done in a month. It would be a revision to the zoning ordinance, which means it has to go back to the coastal commission. And so it's a, let's say a year-long process to revise the ordinance and get it in place.
Thank you.
Tom or Rick or Dave, well, let's start with Tom. Do you have some comment on this?
So, yeah, I guess I don't have a comment yet. I have a question. So option 3 would be, that's a separate, I'm kind of confused on what happens with the emergency ordinance. Like you said, we could adopt it and then come back at the next meeting and have a different ordinance that would be part of one of these options?
No, Councilmember Davies, if you adopted this ordinance, it would create a simple moratorium on issuance of STR licenses.
Okay.
Of course, that the STR committee and the planning commission would continue to review the existing STR ordinance for any substantive, revisions, amendments that it might recommend to the council. But the proposed ordinance would just on an urgency basis create a moratorium. The point, what you have to come back for is in order to, by statute, that moratorium expires within 45 days unless your council conducts a public hearing at a future meeting within that 45-day period and then elects to continue the moratorium. And you can do so, I believe it's for an additional 10 months and 15 days. There's a structure within the statute. I don't have it open in front of me. Okay. You can typically keep this moratorium active for approximately 2 years while you consider these things. But you have to do that by urgency ordinance, then conduct the public hearing to continue it within that 45-day period.
Okay, thank you.
David, did you have a comment or question?
No, it's been answered.
I guess I have another question. So really these options, if you didn't approve the interim emergency ordinance, none of these, it doesn't seem like option 1 on its own would be legal if we didn't have an ordinance. Is that true?
Yeah, to basically affect option 1, we need to tinker with the language of the proposed ordinance in front of you. I created a draft ordinance consistent with what the council directed previously, which was just a moratorium.
Yeah, I understand. So if you tinkered to allow option 1, does that still have the requirement to meet again for public hearing within 45 days?
Yeah, it will. It'll still be a position of a moratorium, just on a more targeted zone, right? STR license.
Okay.
But it'll still be the same process. Theoretically, we could potentially combine the public hearing on the proposed moratorium at the same time. I'd have to take a look at the protocol for that, but it might be possible.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
So Russ, you're saying that at our next meeting, we could count this as a public meeting for this, or would it have to be something separate?
Yeah, we'd have to agendize an actual public hearing on a proposed moratorium in excess of 45 days. Basically, you can only adopt a moratorium not to exceed 45 days without a full public hearing. Right.
Well, it has to be a item by itself for a public meeting. Okay, all right. Is the council pretty clear about what we're talking about now? Are you clear about the 3 ideas? Or any questions that you're concerned about?
I'm
Okay.
ready for public.
Is there anybody else who would like to comment or question this item? I don't see anything. I guess I'd go back to Trevor again. Trevor, do you feel any of these are a better idea for you and as part of the planning commission?
No, I mean, I think under all of the options, review of the STR ordinances is a priority. I think that the STR advisory committee does have some plans to go through the ordinance and provide some input to the planning commission. It is something that, like someone mentioned, we do have a lot on our plate, and so I do want to try and approach this kind of systematically so that we can continue to work on other business as well. In terms of the timing, It's just going to depend on the public involvement and the scope of the changes. You know, if changes are minor, they can probably get through the Coastal Commission pretty quick. If you know, there's wholesale changes, you know, additional caps and restrictions, you know, the Coastal Commission will likely want additional justification, which will take a little more time. I think the reason that these additional options were proposed was having to do with kind of managing and mitigating risk to the city. You know, should someone object to the moratorium, and so these are ways to maybe minimize those potential risks of litigation and other things. So I think that was the purpose of the options, but the review of the ordinance will go ahead regardless of which option you choose.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Trevor. Aaron, I think you have something you'd like to add.
Yeah, I apologize if I missed the public comment section. Two things. One, just from back to point 3 of the options, as speaking on from my perspective as one of the planning commissioners, it is on our agenda this year as something we want to do. And yes, it is something that I feel like we've kind of as a group, Trevor, if you agree, you know, feel that the STR committee is kind of an ideal audience to do this. And that's kind of what the purpose of that group. So as far as anything being rapid with that, I just don't see that as reasonable. Then just simply commenting as a resident of town, if I understood everything correctly, it sounds like, you know, not putting value judgments, but the worst case, there are potentially 2 additional in kind of the key sensitive areas of the residential that are 2 more licenses that could be up for vacancy. I just want to put out there is all of the effort and work that would be required to pass this moratorium and then come back every 45 days to do it. Is that the best use of the energy and efforts of everybody? Or could we put that energy towards something else to try and address the issues and work on these? That's my only comment. Thanks.
Eli, could you just give us a little bit of information on what he's just discussed with us? Is that right?
You're saying about what Aaron just mentioned?
Right. Numbers.
Yeah, well, generally speaking, I mean, and between what was mentioned also by Trevor, so I had approached the STR advisory committee and asked if they could take like a first stab at the ordinance. And then after that, then it would come to the planning commission. Generally speaking, the ordinance seems to be working well, but it needs that initial review to look at possibly some of the numbers. You know, if we should have an overall city cap, also the numbers in the residential zones and so on. And then as far as the, let's see, the other part of it, I'm looking at specifically the moratorium. I know Aaron said every 45 days. I believe from what Russ was saying is that the initial one would expire within the 45 days and we would need to hold a public hearing. And at that point with the public hearing, I'm thinking we could then extend it for another 10 months. And then after that, after the 10 months or during the 10 months, then it could be extended for possibly up to another year. So altogether, Russ was saying possibly up to 2 years through those steps. So, and then the options themselves, you know, the ordinance, and then these are things that could be added, as Tom was saying, basically to the ordinance. So in other words, you know, we could say, you know, that it's only going to apply to 2 of the 4 zones, leaving the other 2 zones open. Or we could say until the moratorium is in effect, you know, if anything had been brought forward before, that could have been used through the wait list. And then the third one, I think, is a given as far as the fact that it's going to go to the planning commission. It's just the fact of, you know, the council basically saying, we'd like to have it done sooner, because I know the planning commission had set their goals and had identified a number of things that they needed to do this year. And therefore, it would be basically being the council saying, can you move it up the ladder so that it could be addressed a little sooner? Meaning after the STR committee has taken the first stab at it. So hopefully that'll give answers to whatever questions you had. If you have any other questions specifically, Jack or anyone else, I can try, or Russ or Trevor to answer.
Okay, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, governing is hard. And it's even harder when you have volunteers on different committees trying to get things accomplished. But when I look at the overall perspective of short-term rentals in Trinidad, it's really long overdue that it be reviewed, and be reviewed carefully, and be reviewed with public input as well. I think if we looked at the third option and reviewed it again within 45 days at the next meeting, or held a separate council meeting just in short-term rentals, we could then make a decision, if necessary, postpone it for 10 months to give the necessary committees and volunteers within the city governance to get those jobs completed and get those reviews completed. I just don't want to rush into this because much of this work is overdue, and I'm not placing blame on anyone. We're all busy. We all have things to do, but clearly it's an overdue review. And I'd like to give the city time to do it and to do it properly. So my perspective is to look at the third option to try to get this done, but give the Planning Commission, the Short-Term Rental Committee, Advisory Committee time to get it completed. Thank you.
David, go ahead.
Yeah, I concur with all that too. When I was reading it earlier, that was the only one, option 3. The other two made a lot of sense, but I almost felt like we were kind of taking on everything as the council ourselves. I like the fact that, even if we're directing them to kind of expedite the process, it's going to happen when it happens. But so yeah, I'm looking at, accepting it with option 3 plus option 3 at this point. And I'm not sure we heard from everybody from the public yet, but I want to listen to more if there's more out there.
Right. Tom, do you want to add something?
I'll wait till after public comment.
So with the third option, we're going to be coming back in the next 45 days to have public comment. Seems like that's a great idea, as we need to get more public comment. And that would be part of number 3, I believe. And Russ, go ahead. I think we got some comment.
Yeah, number 3 is just a simple motion by your council to direct staff, to direct the Planning Commission to prioritize STR ordinance review amongst its list of priorities and report back to the council. It doesn't contemplate that this would be back on a future city council agenda. Of course, at any time, the council could agendize, status of STR ordinance review as just a general discussion item if it so chooses. But as drafted, the third option simply contemplates you make a motion and your council directs staff to work with the Planning Commission to prioritize STR ordinance reviews so it no longer slips through the cracks.
All right. Is there any public comment now that we have more information that anybody would like to add some information?
And can I just clarify? I think maybe a little bit what's confusing is I think option 1, 2, 3 can also be standalone options, and that's not really clear in the staff report. And so I think, when we were talking about it with staff, is that option 3 could be standalone without the moratorium, or it could be with the moratorium, either way. So it can be any combination of those options.
So in other words, we would be able to state that we would like to keep the moratorium in place, which would require us to have in 45 days, another meeting with the public.
Yes.
But we would like number 3 to be the option we use, or we could just say number 3 and we're leaving the STR ordinance as it is. Does that sound right, Russ? Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So it's back to the council. We can make a motion. We can discuss this more. What do you have? What would you like?
Have we heard from the public yet?
I saw no hands in the public, so I assuming it's coming back to us. If I missed somebody, I apologize, but I haven't seen anybody making any comments. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, so if we pick the option of directing the planning commission to expedite the review of the ordinance, what happens with the two openings that we currently have? Do they get filled, or are they kind of held in limbo until this ordinance is revised and we have a public hearing and within 45 days? I'm just not sure what happens to the two current available openings for that.
The existing ordinance would remain unchanged and those would be filled through the lottery system.
If we don't adopt this ordinance tonight.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
So whatever the motion is, it's going to have two options. It's going to have, if we decide to pick number 3, you would have the option of keeping the moratorium in place or going back to the old STR ordinance. With the ordinance, if we go to keep it in place, we still have the 45 days to come up with a public comment. I think that's right. Is that right, Russ?
Sort of. You need to adopt the proposed urgency ordinance before you tonight by a 4/5 vote in order to impose that moratorium and not fill the existing open licenses. So yes, you have to actually adopt the moratorium and then return it within 45 days to keep it active, have the public hearing and extend the moratorium.
And that we could include that with number 3 as part of that. Is that right?
Yeah, you could adopt the ordinance and then also just simply give staff direction to proceed with number 3 and prioritizing STR ordinance.
Okay, and Tom, go ahead.
So just a few comments. I think it is very important that it gets reviewed. It's been 5 years. It was supposed to be reviewed in 2. My other comment is I don't think it's appropriate for the advisory committee to take a stab at the ordinance for a few reasons. Richard pointed to one of them. It's full of volunteers, and this may be more than they signed up to do. That's A, and then B, that committee is not, from my understanding, is not at full strength. It only has one person from the city that's a resident who's not involved in the STR business. I believe that this is more of a job of the planning commission to review this ordinance. And I'm not sure, I looked for the resolution and I didn't really see, I couldn't find it on the website. And then I believe it wasn't one of the priorities that the STR advisory committee would be revising the ordinance. They were just looking at parts of the ordinance as a further discussion. So what I would like to propose is approving the interim urgency ordinance 2021-01 and directing staff planning commission to expedite review and revision of the STR ordinance. Hopefully within this year, if possible. And so as an aside from that motion, I understand that some people think it's only a couple licenses that would be filled, but let's look at this from a resident's point of view. I live on a street that was very heavy in residents, or very heavy in STRs. Since the COVID moratorium and some other decisions that property owners have made, the number of STRs that have been on my street reduced substantially. We now have a full-time family with children going, potentially going to our school, living down the street. We have another long-term rental. We have such a small town that 2 licenses can drastically change the decorum of a residential neighborhood. And we've seen that happen on Ocean Avenue. The people that live on Ocean Avenue have been very pleased with what's happened in our neighborhood with the resulting lowering of the number of short-term rentals. Their quality of life has been substantially increased. So that's an aside from my motion, which was to adopt the interim urgency ordinance 2021-01 and direct planning commission to expedite review and revision of the STR ordinance.
One brief issue would ask Councilmember Davies to include in his motion to waive full reading of ordinance 2021-01 and adopt by title reference waiver.
Okay, so my motion would be to approve interim emergency ordinance 2021-01, waive the initial reading of interim urgency ordinance 2021-01 and direct the planning commission to expedite review and revision of the STR ordinance. Is that sufficient? Thank you.
Gabe, do you have that? Right, maybe we should get a second on that. Richard?
Yeah.
Okay, we got a second with Richard. Gabe, how you doing on that one?
I got it.
All right, do you mind reading it to us real quick?
Sure. So I got a motion from Councilmember Davies and a second from Clompus to approve the interim urgency ordinance 2021-01, waiving the full reading and adopting the ordinance by title, and direct the planning commission to expedite review and revision of the STR ordinance.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready to, anybody else have a comment in the council? All right, then let's go on. Gabe, if you can do a count, please.
Yes, we'll start with Councilmember Clompus,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Rover,
No.
and West.
Yes. All right,
3 votes yes, 1 no. Russ, does that meet the 4/5?
okay,
Yes, I'll provide additional direction to the city clerk after adoption, but I believe it does satisfy the requirement in light of the absence of one council member.
all right, I think that's good. We're ready to move on. All right, the next item is number 10 on the list, and we moved it up, and that is, we're gonna look at the discussion presentation of the 2022 budget preparation. Eli, I believe that's yours.
Okay, yeah, I'll get it started and then we'll turn it over to Gabe. So the budget for this coming fiscal year will be addressed hopefully by July 1st, approved by July 1st. And yeah, I was just looking at my screen, but I realized that Gabe's putting it up there. So that's good. So it'll hopefully be approved in June. We have probably 2 meetings, our regular meeting, the second Tuesday in June, and then probably a special meeting, which will be the 4th Tuesday in June, where then the budget can be adopted. Gabe will be providing, and I'll be providing some more details, but at this session, it'll be basically a general, some general highlights of where we were with the 2019-2020 budget, and then basically where we're going to be going with the budget for the 2020-2021 year. And so I'll turn it over to Gabe, and he can go through the PowerPoint.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? I just want to make sure before I start talking.
You're good.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to, kick this off. Normally, at least from my perspective, it's kind of nice to know where we land at the end of a fiscal year, just so as we open the door to a new fiscal year, we can forecast better, knowing that if we're operating from a deficit or operating from, let's just say a surplus. And at this point in the process, where I don't have all the information that I need, that generally comes in at the end of April. We have quite a few revenue receipts that come in during the month of April, and those have not been accounted for in the books. But if y'all have had a chance to look at some of the financial statements that were included in this packet. They're through March 31. So, you know, I kind of figured we can take a quick look at some of the, let's look back a little bit so far at the 2019-2020 year and just kind of take a pulse of where we ended up or where we might end up. I think there was a document in the last year's budget that was sort of a bird's eye view perspective. And I just went down that list. I thought we'd just talk a couple of things. I mean, about some of the goals and highlights of that budget. I think we've hit most of the marks so far this year that the council adopted. The general direction the council wanted to go with the 2019-2020 budget. So here's just a couple of things I can highlight with the general fund. You know, we basically promoted Ryan DeSmet to our public works water plant director after Brian Buckman retired, and he's been a tremendous asset to the city. I don't know if anyone has, you know, heard or seen Ryan working during this street project, but he's just you know, priceless from the city's perspective, my perspective, to see how he's caring for the city's infrastructure, watching guys with big heavy equipment and machinery about, you know, pulverized water lines that we don't know how they shut off, you know. So we've had a couple of near misses, but Ryan's been terrific. Your budget continued support of the library, museum, chamber, and the land trust. They'll be receiving their, you know, payments that were authorized in this last budget year. Where we go in the future is still to be determined. The budget maintained critical general services that the city's been able to provide. And it also has two other items that are planning related, the general plan update, and of course, all the planning heavy agenda that we started out with in 2019. We've been able to make progress on. From a public safety perspective, the budget, I guess we renewed. I don't know if we, you know, had much of a choice, but the contract was extended, let's just say, for a full one-time sheriff's deputy. The you know, the majority of the contract was paid this year with COPS funding, which is pretty incredible. It relieves a little bit of the burden on the general fund to cover other things. And also our budget this year has increased the sheriff's coverage with the extra half-time deputy paid with Measure Z funds. Public works perspective, the town hall solar project.
I just wanted to stop for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't get the Measure Z funds for this past budget year.
Was that you talking about for 1920 or 20?
Yeah, 1920 and also for this coming year, the 2021.
Oh, right.
So,
okay,
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everybody. We paid for that on our own. So with the COPS funding, that's what okay, my apologies. So moving forward, thank you, Eli. So with the town hall solar project, the solar panels are scheduled to be installed before June 30. We just had the solar folks here just yesterday, as a matter of fact, assessing some of the electrical needs that this panels will provide. We may not have our battery backup this year, this fiscal year, but we'll certainly have the solar project completed. The funds remain reserved for the Civic Club room update, 10,000. COVID definitely put a pause on any improvements. Although it would have been a great time to do some of the improvements, we had to direct our energies elsewhere. So that money still is in the budget. We'll decide here in the next month or so if that continues into the next fiscal year. And we also have had a real struggle hiring a new employee for the Public Works Department. Although I do am happy to say that the close of the period for the new position that is open is tomorrow, and we received one resume today, or yesterday. So that's kind of exciting. Hopefully we'll have a new employee, a third employee, and we'll be working at full steam. The water fund, we were able to repair the 2 fire hydrants at the Van Wyck and the harbor. Those were you know, on the budget as a priority back in June, and those were accomplished. We've got the Luffenholtz Creek flow monitoring process underway. And we also have been working on the drought contingency plans. Those are 3 items in the water fund that the council wanted to accomplish, and we've been able to do that. Streets, the slurry seal project was finished this year with gas tax funds, and Scenic Drive was striped. And then the grants, we got 2 grants that are gonna happen this year. The connectivity project will finish, stormwater will begin in about a month or so. Here's a couple of misses. I think we didn't get them done. The rate analysis, which should be prioritized, I think this year, every year that goes by, we're not making our money, making ends meet in the water fund is not a good practice. So I think we hit a major roadblock a couple of years ago when we had to contemplate sending the rate analysis out to a bid, and going to bid is complicated, and just the process is like molasses. It slows everything down, and then pretty soon staff gets consumed by other things. So hopefully we can kick that off in the next budget year. Trails maintenance, it's difficult to get anything done around the trails, to be quite honest, with whether it's politics or sensitivities with regards to the permitting processes. So that money still sits in the budget, and hopefully we'll kind of keep that maintained for the year to come. And from a staffing perspective with the consultants, we budgeted $5,000 this year for the last 5-6 years for city attorney. That was, I guess, a gift from the last city attorney to the city, but we are realizing the reality of having a city attorney in terms of the budget. So that's something we'll have to add to this upcoming year budget. Just wanted to touch on some of the revenue sources, just so that we all kind of have a good understanding of where the money comes from that funds the city, that fuels some of the things that you enjoy, whether it's public safety, streets, beautiful trails, clean beaches, property taxes, sales taxes, which the sales tax was renewed this year, back in November. That will begin, or should I say renew, on April 1st for another 4 years, which is a nice thing because it gives us a chance to, work into the future as opposed to like working with a timeline that could expire. So this will give us a 4-year outlook this year if we need to kind of look into the future. Transient occupancy taxes, of course, 10% tax on overnight stays. Licenses and permits is a big one. Business licenses, planning permits, STR licenses. And then, of course, there's rent, franchise fees we get from the Trinidad cell site, PG&E, Sudden Link, and the harbor lease. And the city makes a good amount of money on interest earnings in a good year. Supplemental revenues, Measure Z, that is not happening. And as Eli noted, I was a little quick to the trigger on this one. We did not get Measure Z funds last year. So, that's coming out of the city's general fund, partially afforded by the COPS fund and the general fund. COVID relief, these were kind of exciting for us, Eli and I, this year with the $50,000 that was received. That probably actually paid for your halftime deputy, most of it. And then I guess this upcoming year, we're supposed to see another relief package to the tune of approximately $65,000. The holdover period for the Trinidad cell site continues. We're going to budget this year for about 6 months. Whether it continues beyond that, we'll stick conservatively with our estimates and predictions. Here's a little show of the revenues that, of course, I put that 75, ignore that yellow $75,000. Here's how our revenues play out, and I can share this spreadsheet with a correction of the $75,000 on the website for the city afterwards. But you can see the numbers are fairly consistent, especially if I take out the $75,000 from the 2020-21 budget. They are relatively sustaining. And I refer to the city's budget as like a cat. When you throw it, it always seems to land on all 4 feet. You take money away and you add expenses. Somehow or another, the budget, even with its peaks and valleys, generally tends, in terms of revenue, to kind of land on all 4. Here's a little pie chart of what the city's revenues look like in the form of a pie. And as you can see, occupancy taxes are slowly nudging out the other, seem to keep growing I think, a little bit. Even with the sales tax and the property tax, those are each individual sales tax, by the way, and that's a huge source of revenue for the city, the sales tax, property tax, and occupancy taxes. This is kind of hopefully you can see this. Becky Price Hall, our grant administrator, provided this to me today as a reminder of how much money is funneled through the city in terms of grant projects. So our, $600,000-800,000 general fund budget, not including the water, which is an enterprise fund, but $7,438,000 of grant funds are being used to make improvements to this city, which is pretty extraordinary. And there's a large, what we call a grant payroll allocation of approximately, I think it's around $77,000 that comes in from that money administered through the city to offset some of the staffing costs for the grant administrator, most of the staffing costs, I think 83% to be exact. So with that in mind, I figured I'd throw a slide up that just talks about the next steps. That was just sort of a warm up, and we can ask all the questions we need to, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to say that my next goal is to review the April 30th financial statements, because there were significant revenue receipts that came in that I'll be able to communicate to the council, whether we're breaking even, whether we're a little bit under tapping into our reserves, and hopefully light the fire for a real nice discussion at the next meeting with some more input and more data. And then receive some input tonight for any of the council members, the discretionary ideas, any concepts you want us to try to factor in, things that maybe I missed or Eli missed, that would be helpful for us to try to put into the system before we come back at the next meeting, which will be, I think, June 9th or June 8th. And yeah, and that's pretty much all I had for today. Unless anyone has any questions, now I guess is a good time.
Gabe, would you mind going back to the pie chart, or maybe one more back? That one, you showing your occupancy tax. We're showing some pretty good increases. Is that? Are you sure of that? Is that projecting? What do you?
Yeah. Right now, this is really interesting one. I spent a lot of time analyzing the occupancy tax this last 48 hours. And, so 18-19, we had 140,000. Let me see. Okay. 19-20, we dropped. That was when we had that April through June quarter, COVID quarter. Is that right? 19-20? Yeah. So we had a rough quarter when COVID hit us. And then as far as where we're going, what I'm expecting this year, as of now, we're at $91,000. And we have a big quarter that, as far as I can see, all signs point to a kind of a pent-up demand for travel. And if the laws of supply and demand are true, then my guess is that a lot of the vacation rental operators in our region have raised the prices, which then is going to turn around and mean more revenue to the city. So
Okay.
I'm expecting
No, pencil in a circle, that's Gabe talking.
Yeah.
Are you in the top screen? Let's see.
The bottom of my screen has all those.
Okay.
Start video.
You want to make sure there's no red line through the mute button.
There you go.
We mute people.
So if there-
Shit.
Yes,
Yeah, there's no red light.
Okay, then make sure your volume's all the way up. So I've turned my volume all the way down because.
Dorothy, you're on mute.
Oh, Adora, get off.
There you go. Thank you. All right.
Yeah. So
That was my
The numbers
question.
are pretty
Thanks,
con-
Gabe. Yeah.
The numbers are pretty solid. I think we're expecting a good quarter and,
Adora, you're on, they can hear you.
sorry, Dorothy.
All right. I think we're ready to move on. Richard?
Yes, I do have a question for Gabe. When you're going to initiate the water rate review,
They can hear us.
You know,
Because
Can
you mute Dorothy.
you mute?
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, let me start again. Gabe, thank you for the report. Very clear, concise, and helpful. My question is about the water rate review. Will this also include the concept of not just reviewing the rates, but many cities have a different rate for residential use versus commercial use of water? And since it is such a prized resource to have water in Trinidad, I want to make sure if you send this out for bid, that they also consider having one rate for residential use and another rate for commercial use.
I could answer that. Yeah, they will look at the various options compared to what other cities do, and they can make recommendations. They also look at what the state law allows. There are certain restrictions as to who you can raise the rates on and who you can't. But that will be part of the water rate analysis.
And when do you think that analysis will take place?
Well, we have, as Gabe was saying, we have to go out to bid. So, once we get that done, then we will go ahead and award a contract and proceed. We'd like to have it done this year. So it'll be done before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Can I mention something real quick, Eli, about
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
So I'm just going to back up. I like to be as consistent in a linear perspective with, traceability when it comes to city council decisions. So I don't remember what year it was. I believe Dan Berman was the city manager. We attempted this, I think that would have probably been 3 years ago, maybe. We attempted to go through the rate analysis process with our city engineer, who has a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge with the city's system and process. The council at that time learned that the bid for that wasn't even really a bid, it was just an estimate, let's call it an estimate, from the city engineer to do the full rate analysis as required by law, was approximately, I think it was between $13,000 and $14,000. And I think at the council at that time said, whoa, hold your horses, can't we get this done cheaper? And directed the city manager to put the process out to bid to see if there were any other firms that would be interested in doing this process for the city at a lower rate. And, that's what held us up. So we could, as a matter of just the budget, authorize, if we got a new estimate from our city engineers, we could authorize them as an action item in the budget to proceed with that, which would expedite the process. But that's up to the council, and I believe that the traceability would show that the council wanted to go out to bid. It didn't. So I would say as a budget action item, that would be a decision loud and clear to kind of reverse that course.
All right. Thanks, Gabe. Are there other questions? And I want to follow up with what Gabe said, but let's look at questions from the council. I can't see David, so
I can stop sharing.
yeah, is that okay with everybody? We stop sharing? All right, go ahead, Gabe. Go ahead, Tom.
Question for you, Gabe, regarding TOT. Are we still part of the 2% T-bid?
No.
Okay, so maybe it's possible to entertain an increase in TOT, because with that, Trinidad's TOT was 12%.
Right.
Now it's 10. It wouldn't be a change in fee for, customers or whatever. It's a potential area to raise funds.
Yeah, the Humboldt, the T-bid, Tourism Business Improvement District voted that out January of this last year. It was a self-imposed reversal of their process. It was interesting. Any unit that I believe had, it was a minimum number. Like if you didn't have a minimum of like 5 units per location, then you didn't have to pay the 2% anymore. So hotels, bigger institutions will have to put that bill, but the city, all the city's short-term rentals and the bed and breakfast, none of them qualified.
Yeah, so we'd still be in line with many places.
Sure, that would
in
be
Trinidad and in the county for tax. Not that it would prevent anyone from staying here.
Right.
So there's an idea.
Yeah.
Richard or David, do you have any comments or questions about the budget?
I don't at this time, because I know he said there's a lot going on this month. So I'll probably have more questions next month.
All right, Gabe, it looks like we left with a few things to consider. Do you have any, are you good with what we've talked about?
Yeah, I got it all.
Okay. Eli, do you have anything else, or should I move on?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was taking notes to make sure that we follow up on some of those items, so we certainly will. And yes, we can move on to the next item now.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to number 5, which is number 4 on your list, the discussion decision to remove COVID signage at trailheads per the Trails Committee recommendation. And Tom's explained some of this. Eli, do you want to start with that and then go to Tom?
Yeah, that'll be fine. I'm gonna put my light on here. Okay. So at the last Trails Committee meeting on April 20th, the Trails Committee recommended that the city remove the COVID-19 protocol signage at the various trailheads. So that was signage basically telling people what they should be doing to be safe when they're going on the trails. And basically the conditions have improved overall because of vaccinations. But Humboldt County does currently have the second highest per capita count of new COVID infections in the state. And the signage, most of the locals are, maybe familiar with it, at least the ones who patronize our trails. But during the summer season, we get a lot of visitors from outside the city and outside the county, of course. And as a result, people who are from outside the area, possibly from other states, may not know what the proper protocol is that we would like to see in our county. So the suggestions for actions would be either number 1, to remove the signage, or number 2, to keep it in place and reconsider it at a later council meeting, such as either June or July. The vaccinations, for instance, the conditions in the state hopefully will be improving by middle of June, June 15th. And then the vaccinations, the target was by July 4th to have, where people can actually do more things than they've been able to do in the past year. So I would suggest possibly keeping it in place until our next council meeting, and then we can have it either be triggered mid-June or have it basically be lifted by the 4th of July weekend. So I'll turn it over to Tom.
Okay, thank you. So we discussed this at the last Trails Committee, as I mentioned before, and the consensus was to remove the COVID-19 trail signage. I mentioned in my report, the CDC's guidelines have gone from wearing masks at all times to most likely not necessary outside when people are passing. California Department of Health has also adopted this stance. At least one of the signs is being used as a complete barricade to a trail, so that people cannot go down the trail. You can't move it. It's heavy. It's got sandbags. So that's the trail committee recommendation. So I put it before the council to ask questions or discuss this.
David, go ahead.
As far as I know, CDC guidelines are what he just said too. When you're outside, it's becoming more and more optional now. We got about a third of the country vaccinated. Most people over 60, most older people. So I would go with the Trails Committee recommendation too, because you can. It's time to do that. But if the other members think it's better to wait the extra month, I'm not really opposed to that. Headstrong about it.
Thank you, Richard. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I just looked at the CDC guidelines, which indicates masks may not be necessary when you're outside by yourself, away from others, or with people who live in your household. So, it really depends who you're with or who's around you. There's no question that the country's turning a corner. Whether or not we're ready to remove the mask mandate from trails yet, but I'm open either to keep it for one more month and review it, or to remove it now and let people judge for themselves whether to wear masks or not.
My feeling is that we have everything clearing up according to the state. Everything should be changing July 15th. That may be a good date to choose to get rid of the signage. However, there is one sign that sounds like it's a real problem, and that something should be done about that individual sign, even if it needs to be moved away. But I think that's a kind of a different subject. But I would go right away. It's not a problem with me. I think the 15th sounds like a date, just because that's what the governor put out as a date. Things would be cleared up. So I'm either, I'll let Tom, anything else you want to add? Or do you want public comment?
No, public comment.
Okay, let's get some public comment. If anybody has anything that they'd like to put in, you guys are we're all gonna be on those trails. So this is important that we get some information back again. So put your hand up. Let me know if you'd like to say something. Right. Go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry, I guess it's just me tonight. I just wanted to say that I'm also on the Trails Committee. The signage, I think, had a great impact early on when society was kind of learning the new norms for COVID and wearing masks and whatnot. And missing, I feel, a little bit from the report and the options was the recommendation from the Trails Committee, as I recall, was remove the signs, but encourage the city to put something globally, because this is an issue throughout the city. At Murphy's, in the parking lot, at the museum, by the lot, it's not isolated just to the trails. And I would ask, I guess, if the council does decide to keep the signage in place, that perhaps it's worth the investment to refresh them, because they're pretty weathered at this point. It's been, over a year, I think. I don't know if they've been replaced yet, but they're faded. They've had water on them from whatnot, and they're just not, they're a bit of a mixed message in that they're a road barricade with a sign attached to it in most instances. So it's not quite the clearest message to visitors to our community. So that's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment before we go back to the council? I see nobody else.
Oh, I had Anita Thompson.
Please, Anita.
I agree with who just spoke, Aaron.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to continue with the signs and update the signs that are around the city, and also with the city manager too. It doesn't hurt to keep the signs. And I do hike the trails, and there's a time when you're so close to somebody, and if somebody's running or somebody's huffing and puffing and they're walking past you, you could still get the aerosol. Last week, we did a little hike at Redwood Park in Arcata, and they still have signage up. And it's just a reminder for people, when you can't socially distance, when you're passing someone on a trail. Some people are really good at putting their mask on, other people aren't. So if there's a sign that might encourage people as a city manager was saying, from other states where they're not practicing these norms. Thank you.
Eli, would it be tough to have people, have you guys do a little cleanup of the signs?
Yeah, no, that's doable. I know, at least for Ryan, it's been taking a lot of time with the project on Trinity Street. But between him and Kyle, sure, I think that's a good idea to fix up those signs. And then specifically the other sign that seems to be blocking the path, every time our staff sees it there, if it's blocking the path, we move it to the side. Yeah, unfortunately, the neighboring homeowner sort of pulls it towards the middle of the trail. We move it back towards the right side of the trail. So I'll check and see where that's at.
We put a different kind of sign there that might be more appropriate for that place.
Well, it's on an A-frame.
Like on the post.
They just moved the A-frame over.
We put it on a post or fence or something off to the side.
We haven't made a decision as a council yet, so maybe that would be.
I was going to ask if you wanted to add that in, but if we did, obviously think about that. I'm ready now. It looks like it's back to the council. So would somebody like to make a motion, or do we want, or more discussion?
I mean, if I was going to make a motion, it would be to keep them for the next month. It seemed to be the consensus until everybody's sure. Is better safe than sorry.
Is that a motion, David?
Yeah, that's my motion. A little lengthy. Now, I'll make a motion that we retain the signs till next month and make any necessary adjustments to ones that are blocking trails and any updates needed.
We have a second on that. Okay, Richard?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any more comment? Tom, do you have anything you want to add, or should we go for a vote? Okay. Let's do a vote then, Gabe. You've got it clearly understood?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, sorry, it said to find the mute button. So we have a motion, Grover, seconded by Clompus. I get that right?
Yes.
To keep the trail signs in place until next month and adjust placement of signs blocking trails as needed. Did I get that right?
That sounds good. All right, we're ready for a count.
Okay, so we'll start with Councilmember Clompus.
Yes.
Davies.
No.
Grover.
Yes.
And West.
Yes.
You got 3 yes and 1 no. Motion carries.
Okay, we're on to the number, the 6th item. It's number 5 on your list, but it's the discussion decision regarding resolution 2021-05 restricting overnight parking on the north side of Main Street. Eli, I think this is your topic, so let's give us some information.
Okay. So at the last council meeting, it was voted upon to to place signage along Edward Street. It was also mentioned about Hector Street. However, we had walked that area, myself and the mayor and mayor pro tem, to see exactly where signage could be placed, and found that the 2 sides of Edwards would work well, but that Hector was already too narrow to have any parking on it to begin with. So, you know, we don't want to just say no parking overnight. We just don't want people to park there. So now we mentioned at the last meeting that we'd like to address the north side of Main Street. So this resolution is to restrict overnight parking on the north side of Main, to indicate no overnight parking from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. and cite the code. Now, in the meantime, Trevor, our city planner, has talked to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission wants a CUP, a CDP, Coastal Development Permit. So we'll need to get a coastal development permit. So we could still approve this. The resolution is attached, but and then the wording in the resolution that the whereas clause should read north side of Main Street. It says north side of Edwards, but it's both north side of Main. Anyway, we could still move on this item, but just to be warned that we have to wait until a coastal development permit is approved. I'll turn it over. And I see Russ is here. I don't know if Russ has something you'd like to weigh in on this one.
And Russ,
Not as to this item, no.
okay, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like the penalty of this may be that the vehicle may be removed by order of a city police officer. So if someone does decide to park overnight, the police officer, I guess, would knock on the door, the window and say, hey, you got to move. Or if no one's there, it gets towed, but there's no ticket. There's no violation ticket given for this overnight parking.
Yeah, we can have, you know, an amount if you'd like. Once we have the code section in there, the police can write a ticket. So our deputy sheriff can write a ticket, since they can cite that the code, because the code provides that by resolution that we could prohibit parking there. So we could come up with an amount for that. And now, since Russ is still here, I don't know if that's something that we need to have in the resolution, or if that's something that you know, we could leave it up to staff and the deputies, because it's prohibiting parking, and just determine what an appropriate violation would be.
Yeah, we Trinidad Municipal Code, so we'd refer to the code in terms of potential penalties that can be imposed as a component of the violation, but it wouldn't be something we'd address in the resolution.
Yeah,
All right. Oh, go ahead, Richard.
you know, if someone's parking illegally overnight, to me, it'd be better to give them a ticket and have them leave than call a tow company that could run $200 or $300 or $400. And even, are you going to find a tow company that's going to tow an RV? That may be impossible. So giving a ticket would be helpful as well. It may restrict people from repeating the, you know, the parking overnight, put it that way.
Tom, did you have something you wanted to ask or add?
No.
Okay, David?
No, I was kind of curious about the threat of tow too, though, like when you call. I mean, that's kind of like finding some, because they have to pay for their car to get out. I don't know. So that's something that can be worked, though. It sounds like just approving the resolution sounds like the way to go tonight. And then we can hash out some of the rest at the end.
Yeah, personally, I was not thinking of towing, you know, unless I guess we end up with a problem. I was just thinking, number one, the sheriffs indicated that they need something posted in order for them to ticket. And, you know, they could always give like a first time warning, tell people that, you know, they shouldn't be parking there, they should move on. And then the second time they can give them a ticket, or they can automatically give them a ticket if they're parked between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. But yeah, towing would certainly not be the first or second step taken. You know, if there's a repeat offender, that would be a different story.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, sorry, Russ, go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, I believe that we have the protocol in place under the parking citation process under the existing municipal code at section 10.10.010 at set. So I believe we already have that protocol in place to issue a citation rather than a forced tow. But we'll review that, as it will go into effect only after the CDP approval anyway. We will take a look.
Yeah, I believe that if we have a officer up here, or somebody calls an officer to move, to get somebody to move, if they bang on the window and wake them up or whatever they have to do, they're going to want to get out of there. They're not going to want to stay. So I think, I don't think that would be a problem. I guess the only thing we had talked about earlier was just, do we need to have a place for locals if they need to park? I'd like to return to that sometime and discuss if we want to give out some kind of pass to people who live in Trinidad who may need to park on that side if necessary. Other than that, I think it's a great idea. So do we have anybody in the public who wants to ask a question or provide information or any, yes, Aaron, of course.
I know, right? Why stop now? I guess just two questions, and I'm a little late to this topic. One, you kind of raised the issue of residents being able to park, but I guess maybe the continuous thing, is I guess as long as we're moving our cars, I know some of us might have a car that gets parked for a length of time. And then my other question is there any concern, has there been any previous discussion about the piecemeal approach to this and the concern for, is it more advantageous to put one sign at the entrance to town saying, hey, past this point, or do we want to piecemeal songs along this street for now? And then when folks realize legally I can move my vehicle to a different street that's not, specifically listed or enumerated by the city. So I don't know if it's worth contemplating that as you guys move forward with this. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, we did have a discussion about that, and just that there are limitations on what we can do. So this seemed like a good start. I think the idea of a sign is I think something we'll be thinking about as we go forward. And we also have a traffic study coming along. Hopefully that'll answer some questions, but we thought this might be a start at least to get the people off the streets where they are parking easily. Eli, do you have anything else, or is that good? Are we covered now?
Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Okay. All right. So if there's no other public comment, and I'm still looking for anybody who might want to raise their hand. Bryce, do you want to say something? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Bryce. I thought your hand was up. It isn't. Anybody else? All right, then we're back to the council, and we need, we've got we need to get a motion in place.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2021-05.
All right, you have a second?
Second.
All right.
And of course, the resolution with the wording changing Edward Street to Main Street in the now therefore be it resolved clause.
Okay. Well, and we had a second from, is that all right, David?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have to add that. I'll just, him adding it should be good enough. The verbiage change was a good.
I think Tom got a second on that one. So Gabe, look ready.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2021-05 prohibiting overnight parking on the north side of Main Street. And we'll start with Councilmember Klompus.
Yes.
Davies.
Yes.
Grover.
Yes.
And West.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
All right, the next thing is the discussion decision regarding the first reading of ordinance 2020-102, amending the Trinidad Municipal Code 10.08.010 to restrict overnight parking in the public parking lots, and that is number 8 on your list. Eli.
Yeah, I'll get it started, then Russ could weigh in if. So basically, we were talking about problems that have existed in public parking lots, specifically the parking lot where the museum and the library is, where people have been staying overnight parking there. So our attorney had pointed out that, yes, the current ordinance does allow by resolution when you're dealing with streets and alleys, but it does not mention parking lots. So therefore, we would like to add the wording public parking lots so that they would be prohibited by this code. So we'd actually be adding to an existing ordinance that simply addresses public streets and alleys and then include parking lots to it. So I'll turn it over to Russ if he has any more comments.
Yeah, it's a slightly more nuanced than that. We would need to change the existing ordinance. Obviously, the purpose of a parking lot is to park, right? So we need to be clear that a violation would only occur when parking on a public parking lot enumerated by resolution of the city council occurs in a manner contrary to the restrictions created by the signage. So, for example, you could have a sign in a parking lot that says no overnight parking and very clearly puts the public on notice prior to any citation issue. So in order to do that, we would need an amendment actually to the existing ordinance text that doesn't reference in any respect public parking lots. So this is actually the formal ordinance amendment protocol. This will require 2 readings. So if the council wants to proceed as previously instructed, the recommendation be that the council make a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-02, waive full reading of the ordinance and waive the full first reading, and then return it at a subsequent council meeting for potential adoption.
Right. All right. Any, does the council have some questions? Tom, go ahead.
Does this one also require a coastal development permit?
I think I was not part of those conversations, but I think you should.
Yeah, this would not require a coastal development permit because it is a parking lot that we could regulate the parking lot. It's not the street.
Okay. Any other questions from the council or comments? All right. I don't see any council members asking questions. How about anybody of the public? Anybody have a question or a comment? Ashley?
Yes. So I am a bit new to the community and I was curious, is there any overnight parking in Trinidad?
No, essentially, there's not. That's what we wanted to, but we have to get these rules into, we have to begin marking things. The police or the sheriff can then step in and actually address these problems. And they need us to write in ordinances so they're clear. Are we? Thank you. All right, then, if there's no other comment, we can go to a motion. Would there someone like to make a motion?
I move we adopt ordinance 2021-02, the waiving of the full first reading and bringing back for subsequent to a subsequent meeting for possible adoption. How was that?
Second it.
All right. Okay, we got it. So we got a first and a second. Any other comments? All right, then let's go to Gabe. Let's hear what you got.
Okay, I've got motion by Councilmember Davies, seconded by Grover to adopt the first reading of ordinance 2021-02, waiving full reading and approving by title, amending municipal code 10.08.010 to restrict overnight parking in public parking lots.
Well, you got that. Tom did a good job, didn't he?
And we'll start with Councilmember Klompus.
Yes.
Davies.
Yes.
Grover.
Yes.
And West.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great.
Councilmember,
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine.
We proceed to the next agenda item. There is a point of order I need to call the council's attention to regarding the urgency ordinance adopted 2021-01, item 3. So during the previous agenda items, I did review further the supermajority vote requirements in the context of Government Code 65858, the urgency moratorium imposition. There is one California case that interprets that ordinance to require, in fact, 4 votes. Typically, for any city council action where there's less than full council present, a supermajority is satisfied by a supermajority of the remaining votes. In this circumstance, it appears as if 4 votes are actually required to impose the moratorium. As a result, the ordinance would then fail. So with that stated, the the council should be aware of that fact. We'll give a formal legal opinion to the city manager and staff prior to any imposition or enforcement of that urgency ordinance. But as a result, lacking 4 votes, it appears to not pass. And if I recall correctly, I believe Mayor Ladwig recused himself on this item previously. If I recall. So
what's our next step?
May never have the requisite vote. Anyway, go ahead.
Does this mean it goes back to the original, and now Eli will have the, I mean, are we going to lose our whole moratorium then? Are we back? Where are we?
You need 4 votes to impose a moratorium on under Government Code 65858, which this is. It's a land use zoning moratorium under that statutory provision. So to impose it, you're going to need 4 votes. Again, we'll give a formal legal opinion. I do want to shepherdize that case. It's a bit old. It's 1996, but it appears to still be good law in terms of interpreting this 4-vote requirement. In essence, requiring 80% of the council to approve an action, which the only opportunity for that is 4 out of 5 votes, or 100%, 4 votes, 4 votes.
So in the meantime,
it would be your existing ordinance will remain in place unaffected.
Okay, and we have still directed the planning commission to move ahead at the number 3 spot. So that's still in place, right?
Absolutely, yes. That's simply a directive motion.
Okay, so we got that directive, and we'll come back to this then in a month, and if we need to.
Yes, I'll update that, and I'll share that opinion with the council where appropriate as well prior.
And I'm going to wait on any actions until you finish your shepherdizing and make sure that you know what the technicalities are.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we got a month to look at it. We'll be back next month with it.
Jack?
All right, so we're number 7 on the list, number 8 overall.
Richard's got a question or comment.
Richard, sorry.
No, it's okay, John. I just want to understand, because Mayor Ladwig has recused himself because he's a short-term rental owner, and we didn't have 4 votes. That means that the current 2 licenses can now be filled?
Yes, the current 2 licenses, the existing ordinance will remain in place, which has the lottery protocol on filling up to the cap of licenses imposed by the ordinance. If the other options for the council is if the dissenting member were to reconsider, we could always return it to the agenda and potentially get unanimous consent to imposition of a moratorium. Or if there's not a recusal, we had 4 votes. Regardless, we need 4 votes under that statutory scheme for the moratorium.
So is it going to be your review that you have to do of this previous 1996 ruling?
Case, yes.
The current vote that we had then becomes null and void until you can review that, or is it in place until you review it?
The vote stands as stated. So 3 out of 4 council members voted in favor to impose the moratorium. The issue is, in order to legally impose it, if a requisite 4/5 vote is required, it's unenforceable until it's been passed by 4 votes. So your action stands as is, the record's established, but I believe the legal opinion of the city will be it's unenforceable absent 4/5 vote. Again, I will shepherdize that case to see if there's any exception to it, but case law simple. In that context, it was a 3 out of 5 majority vote, but this case specifically recites the 4/5 requirement in the statute, interpreting that to require 4 votes. Again, we'll give the city a formal legal opinion on that, but there's no further action you need to take tonight. The only issue is the effect of 3 votes out of 4 and whether that's sufficient under the government code.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll return to that. That'll be back on the June agenda. So we'll get back to it. All right, so the next one is the discussion and decision to appoint council members to the Turai management team. And Eli, I'll let you get that started, please.
Okay. So there's been a request that we have our Churi management team meetings again, based upon the government item, number 1, even though it hasn't been formally approved, it basically, according to our city attorney, according to the Brown Act, the only exception for holding meetings if council members are present would be open meetings. Otherwise, if it is a meeting concerning some kind of a cultural artifact, then it would be suggested that, you know, those meetings, of course, be closed, but those meetings would end up having to be represented by the city through staff. So this particular agenda item is to appoint 2 council members to the Churi management team. These would be meetings that we could be talking about the trails. We can be talking about the 12.5 acres. We can be talking about generally anything that would be necessary to have the Churi management team weigh in on. And as a result, those would all be open meetings. And when I say appoint 2 council members, the city can be represented by either 1 or 2 council members. It's just that we thought it would make sense to appoint 2. So if 2 wanted to attend, or if 1 wants to be an alternate, we can. Otherwise, and then of course, staff will be available for those meetings too. So I'll turn it over in case there's any questions or comments.
Start with anybody on the council who would like to ask questions about it, get more information.
And I notice Russ is still on the line. I don't know if Russ needs to weigh in, but this is basically the only way that we could have would be the open meetings with the management team when council members are a part of it. Otherwise, it would have to be staff members if it needs to be closed.
Yeah, the principal issue under the Brown Act is what is the purpose of the standing committee or ad hoc committee? If it's vested with some continuing jurisdiction to do something like this would be, to facilitate meetings with the Ancestral Society, that's a specific delegation and assignment of continuing jurisdiction or obligation for that committee. And Brown Act case law contemplates that those type of committee meetings, even though only 2 council members are present, are subject to the Brown Act open meeting agenda and open meeting requirements.
Thank you. Any of the council have any questions about this? David, do you have something? Okay, then let's go to the public comment. Jackie, you're on.
Thank you, Jack. With all due respect to the tribal or the city council, Trinidad Rancheria believes it would be premature to resume Churi management team meetings while this very matter is being litigated. And also, we're just on the verge of engaging in mediation. The litigation is going towards mediation. And we would recommend that the city's legal counsel may need to review this and advise, because as per an email from Russ Gans dated December 3rd, 2020, regarding the consultation policy, to me personally, he indicated that targeting issues subject to pending litigation not yet adjudicated would not be appropriate. So these are matters that are pending and not yet adjudicated, because the very thing the Rancheria Tribal Council has requested is to be part of the tribe management team. So going forward without that case being adjudicated would be inappropriate to resume meetings before adjudication and before mediation. Thank you.
Russ, would you be willing to talk to this, please, so we get a clear picture?
Yes, again, what's contemplated tonight is appointment of the committee to resume the meetings. They would be conducted in an open and public forum. So you're not taking any action as to reconstituting the Shuri management team or taking some action that relates to something specifically germane to the litigation in that respect. The Shuri management team exists. There's a policy in place creating it. The issue here would be to appoint council members to serve on that. Now, there's no specific meeting contemplated as of this point in time. It's simply to get your committee in place should the council's prerogative be to do that, is create and appoint council members to serve on that management team.
Okay, thank you.
Russ, I do want to note that, the city did receive a request from the Shuri Ancestral Society requesting a meeting. Part of it, I think, is dealing with maintenance of the trails. And then, of course, the other one on the staff level, we could meet with them. They have concerns about the possibility of looting, which I tried to verify, but just the concept of addressing looting and how best to try to curtail that. So those are two things that are basically on the table. One of them would need to be addressed in a closed session with staff, but the other one was a request to have the meeting with the management team. I would think basically to address maintenance of trails as one issue, possibly others, because we haven't had a meeting of the management team for I believe a couple years now. So that's why they felt that it was needed, soon. So.
I think that we have another comment before we go back to the council. So I believe a phone number 630-1168, was that, did I see a hand up on that number? Okay. Any other comments before we move back to the council again? Bryce?
Jack, yeah, I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. I don't see any harm in just appointing the members to the committee. I think it's a shame that the whole Shuri study area issue is become so into such a quagmire and kind of come to a standstill. So I think it would be good to at least point some people on the committee and see if we can get things going again, get the issues resolved.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? I'm going to make just a quick one that I think if we do, whoever we choose, I would like to make sure that we are going in the right path. So it will depend a little bit probably on Russ to make sure that if we get into meetings that that's clear that these things are proper. We're not interfering with anything legally. So the next thing we have to do is we have to come up with who would be interested in being on the management team. I know I've been on it before and I'd like to stay on it. So I'll put myself out there. Is there someone else who would like to be part of this?
Yeah, I'd like to be part of this too.
Okay.
It's been a big part of my education and my time here in Humboldt.
Great. Richard or Tom, do you have any comments on that, or would that sound? Yes.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the water committee. I'm part of the mediation team to try to settle the lawsuit, and I don't want to get conflicting positions by trying to be on both sides of an issue.
Okay.
I'd like to pass, although I'm interested, I'd like to pass for this committee for other reasons.
And I'm also supposed to be that with Richard too, so I don't mind bowing out too if somebody else wants to break it
Tom,
up and spread it.
I'm sorry, David, are you interested, Tom, or? Okay, Steve's not here, so, do we need to, do we need to have a motion on this, Eli, or is it just, we just give you, tell you who wants to be with it?
Well, Russ is also on the call, but I think, we're basically, I guess the agenda item does say appoint council members, but generally speaking, a lot of times we just ask people to serve on committees and who wants to volunteer to serve. So I'll let Russ answer that as to if it has to be done formally or just accept you as a volunteer, and then at the next meeting, see if Steve is interested.
Yeah, for clarity of record is you should have a formal motion to appoint the designated council members to serve as an ad hoc committee or standing committee for that purpose. If you're not certain, or you may want to appoint the mayor to that, you can always push this to the next meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we can do it. I guess probably Richard or Tom, would you like to make a motion?
I am not sure what the motion is. So Dave, did you withdraw your name?
Yeah, if I have a court, I was going to ask Russ if he thinks that would create a conflict of interest, because I see Richard's point. I don't want to spread myself too thin or leave anyone else out of the process if they're willing to step up too.
No, not necessarily. There's no conflict of interest per se that'd be created by your service on that committee.
So David, what would you like to do?
There we go. I was muted there for a second. Yeah, then I'll do it then if he doesn't really think it, because I feel like I can look at things objectively.
Okay, Tom, you want to do it?
Sure, I'll move to appoint Jack West and David Grover as members of the Trinidad or the Churai management team.
Richard, you want to second that, or?
I'll second it.
Okay, we got the first and second. And Gabe, could you do a count, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll repeat the motion. Davies and Klompus to appoint council members West and Grover as representatives to the Churai management team. We'll start with council member Klompus.
Yes.
Davies.
Yes.
Grover.
Yes.
And West.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
All right. The next item, number 8 on the list, the 9th item is the decision to appoint 2 council members to the Water Advisory Committee. And I think we know a lot about that. Eli, why don't you give us a brief update?
Okay. So during the past few months, the city has talked about establishing the Water Advisory Committee, and I believe it was at the last meeting that we officially approved the composition of it, which is 2 city council members, 2 members of the public, and then 1 planning commission member. So as a result, we wanted to allow the council the opportunity to appoint the 2 council members on this particular agenda item.
Okay. So do we have any questions or at all from the council or volunteers? Richard?
Yes, I have a real interest in trying to help Trinidad develop a more resilient water system, whatever those directions are. I'd like to explore them, look at the data, and help the city council make decisions to create a safer water system for the city. I don't have any answers yet, but I'm willing to work and explore those completely.
I think that's great. You've done a good job already, Richard, out with the water, so I think that's a great choice. David?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned last time too, I have put some research and some practical application to these water catchments and pump storage systems too. So I would like to be involved and learn more from some people, some experts that really know about watershed management.
Tom, do you have an interest?
I would have an interest, but I know that Richard and Dave has mentioned this for the past couple of meetings. And so I would defer to them. And I don't know if we needed an alternate or replacement in the future, I would put my name forward for that.
Great. And I agree with that. I think it's great. You two guys would be good choices. Before we go further, is there anybody in the community who would like to add any information or any suggestions or questions? Yes. Paula, do you want to say something? You got to unmute and let us hear you. Is that just good? All right. All right. That's a positive. Anybody else? All right. Doesn't look like anyone else is saying anything. So I'll make a motion that we accept Richard Columbus and Dave Grover on the Water Advisory Committee. Tom, do you want to do a second? Okay, we got Tom as a second.
Second.
All right. Gabe, we're ready to take a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've got a motion by Councilmember West and second by Davies to appoint Councilmembers Columbus and Grover to the Water Advisory Committee. We'll start with Councilmember Columbus.
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Grover,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
All right, we're on to our final item on our discussion agenda items, and that is the discussion decision to review letters of interest received from Trinidad Water System customers to serve on the Water Advisory Committee and consider appointments. So let's start off with Eli, just giving us a quick update.
Okay. So as I mentioned with the last item, the composition of the Water Advisory Committee would include two public members who happen to be connected to the Trinidad water system. So it could be a resident of Trinidad, or it could be someone who resides outside the city, but is a water customer of the city. As was indicated for this meeting, we actually set up a 2 p.m. deadline, and as of 2 p.m. today, from my knowledge, we had received the 3 applications which are included in your packet. I'm unaware if any others have come in since then, since the packet was prepared. So we do have Dwight Miller, who's a former council member, and we have Paula Levine, who is a water customer from outside the city limits. And we have Bryce Kinney, who is a resident in the city and a water customer, of course. So I'll turn it over to you and I can help answer any questions there may be.
So you're going to put us on the spot to try to pick 2 of these 3 people. Is that right?
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Now, if you want to ask anyone any questions, or if you feel like you'd like to have, more applications and extend the period, or if you feel like you want to make a decision, that's the democratic process. However, the council as a majority wishes to handle it.
Okay, so first of all, we have a variety of questions. We have some people that weren't sure they got the information, and we have 3 good candidates who would like to be involved. So I'm going to open it up to the council if they've got questions or recommendations or any kind of decisions. Now's the time. And Richard, do you want to start?
Well, the question I have is, it should be a water customer. Is it preferred that it be a water customer within the city limits, or water customer anywhere that's provided services from our water service?
The way it's written is it's anywhere.
That's the answer. David, what do you want to ask?
I wasn't going to ask, I was just going to add to that. Like, I believe that we did want to consider the whole area because that's a little more democratic, because it's the same water supply. So it makes it a little more that perspective.
Tom, did you have any comment or? Okay, so I know we have 3 good people in already that could be part of this. We will have to pick 2, but before we start that, let's get to public comment. Ashley, you had mentioned earlier that you didn't feel like everybody got an opportunity. Do you want to reply to that again?
Yes, sorry, I did. I heard someone say that this was out in March, but yeah, I just wanted to, make sure everybody had enough time to, I'm sorry, my partner just walked in right when I had the turn to talk. I wanted to make sure that everybody was included, and I didn't have all the information until late yesterday evening, and I just wanted to make sure that it was a democratic process and it wasn't being rushed. I just wasn't exactly sure all of what was going on with the municipal water and how the community would be affected and what exactly was going on with the analyses. And I thought that there already was an analysis of the water and where it comes from. I just wanted to be really clear because I know it costs a lot of money to have these studies done. And if there is a study and it does work, I was just curious what was the need for another one?
This is actually a committee that's going to look at possible ways to improve our water system. And so we have some people that have been interested in this for a while. And so I think we've had the information out there, but we can also hear from other people within this community if anybody has something they'd like to add to this. And just for Ashley and others, these will be open meetings, so people will have an opportunity to come in and make their voices known. We're not trying to leave anybody out, but we do need to have a strong committee to get this going. So any other comments? Yes, Paula?
I just wanted to let Ashley know that if she went to the Trinidad city website, she could find a lot of information and documents about the history of the water system. And if she has any trouble finding any documents, she could just call the city clerk and he or she will walk you through it.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And we welcome you to be part of this, Ashley, as much as possible. Anybody else have a question or a comment or a recommendation? All right. Bryce, do you want to add something? That was going to be next. Let's hear the candidates, but go ahead.
Yeah. At the risk of being accused of self-promotion, I'm going to go ahead and make a pitch for myself. With all due respect to Ms. Levine, I think this committee is too important for someone's first time out with civic involvement. Both Dwight and I have held various offices in the city over the years and have experience dealing with staff and the fiscal ramifications of decision-making and so forth. So I think that the two of us are the logical choices with our experience and so forth. So that would be my suggestion. And perhaps Ms. Levine should start with another committee and work her way up to the big time, so to speak. But I do appreciate her interest, and so that's my recommendation, and thank you for considering it.
Okay. Paul, I think it's your turn to.
With all due respect to, is it a Mr. Bryce or is that your first name?
Mr. Kenny.
Ken.
Kenny.
With all due respect for Mr. Bryce, Ken, I think it's time to have some fresh blood in the system. And I see you're all guys there. Wouldn't hurt to have a little female energy. I think I would be quite competent. And if it didn't work out well, we could always change and bring in one of the guys. But I think you should give me a chance. I've been a water customer for 30 years. I paid $7,500 to hook up to Trinidad water 30 years ago. And I have a passion for the same as Richard does, just for the whole, I have a passion for water as most people do. So I think I would be a good person. And I think you should maybe break with the routine and give me a chance.
Very good. Thank you. And before we make a decision, for all three people involved, this is not like we're throwing you out of the whole thing. Remember, this is open meetings. You can come in and make yourself known and be part of it. You just wouldn't be on the decision-making side of it. All right, so we have three people, and we need to have two put on the committee. So we're gonna have to come up with a way to do this. So I'm gonna, I think yeah, David, go ahead.
Well, I was kind of, I liked Mr. Kenny's pitch there too, but I was almost thinking of one person with with experience like him, and maybe one newer person like Ms. Levine. That was my feeling of it, because it maybe kills two birds with one stone too. You get the fresh blood and you get the experience.
Eli, what's been generally the pattern of getting of deciding people in a three-way, where there's three of them, we want to get down to two? What's generally done? Do we just have has it been just people, somebody's going to make a motion, or is there a better way to do this?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it by motion, or, you know, if we weren't by Zoom and if we were all in the same room, we could have had a paper ballot, and everybody could have written down their couple names, and then we could just pass them in, and then Gabe or myself could have counted them. And then another option is, of course, to keep it till the next meeting and have also the mayor weigh in, and at the same time request that all three people, you know, make a pitch for a couple minutes or something. So yeah, it's hard to say exactly what would be the best. If we were all meeting live, we'd have more options.
I mean, we have three good candidates. I don't want to put anybody down. I think there's ways I could think of looking at it. We could try to do it through a, I don't know about a chat, or we could Eli our two requests, and then he would be able to take a vote. Do we have that capability in this?
Pardon the interruption. This is the conference operator with AT&T. I have a Victoria Rosen that's trying to dial in for this conference. She does not have the access code. Can I give it to her?
I don't see why not. Any problem? No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
In the meantime, waiting for this person to come on. There's a chat box down here, and I think we could do, we could pick to Eli, and each of us could send in two names. It would be private, and no one would know who sent them in. So we could each do two names. Would that be a satisfactory way to do this? What do you think, Eli? Like that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good approach.
All right. Is everybody?
Is that typically?
Is
It
that
seems
legal?
like it's a public meeting, and now we're conducting something in secret.
I don't know.
I'm a
I
little
don't know.
concerned.
I thought that we could pick two people. Eli would see this. He would pick the people we chose. Or do you want to do? Oh, would you like to rather just all of us pick somebody or make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Let's do a motion then. That's great.
All right.
We may have one more phone call. I'm not going to be able to wait any longer. Do we have somebody on the line that's interested in saying something? Some studio control, I think.
Anita Thompson wanted to say something.
Anita, while
Yeah.
we get, go ahead. You're on.
I already put in a written comment that I feel that I strongly recommend Dwight Miller.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have Tom go ahead and give his. Go ahead, Tom, and give your motion?
I would move to approve Bryce Kenny and Dwight Miller to the Water Advisory Committee.
Okay, anybody want to second that? It's tough because nobody wants to shut somebody out. But
how about if I revise and we can do one at a time and narrow it down?
I would put a second on that actually. If you
Okay.
wanted to do that. I like Paul. I don't want to make you feel bad, but I do know these people are. I just know them pretty well. I know they'll do a good job, and I'm hoping you won't be upset and you'll go out and help with the committee whenever possible.
I will not be upset and I will participate, whether I'm on the committee or not.
I appreciate that. I feel bad, but anyway, we have a first and a second. I think we're ready to vote. First of all, do we have any public comment?
I have a question about what would happen if it didn't pass. Then we're going to need to go back and do them one at a time. It would.
That'd be fine.
Seem like, okay.
So let's just see if this passes first. So if we don't have more comments, we're up to Gabe.
Okay, sorry, mute. We got a motion from Councilmember Davies, seconded by West, to appoint Bryce Kenny and Dwight Miller to the Water Advisory Committee. We'll start with Councilmember Klompus.
Aye.
That was a yes.
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Grover,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Well, I hope to see you involved. I think it'll be great.
Thank you.
I was pulling for you too, Paula.
Who said that?
David Grover.
Oh.
All right. Last thing, that ends our regular discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry if I'm breaking in over someone. Hello?
You just got to us. We're pretty much done with the meeting. We're moving on.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
I've been trying for well over half an hour to get connected. Hello?
Yes, can you hear us?
Oh, you can hear me now. Oh my gosh. Well, I had a few, as a citizen of Trinidad, I wanted to thank all of you for this great meeting. I have been trying to follow all the instructions, but there were some lacking ones, so I haven't been able to be heard or participate. And, I hope this didn't happen to other people because this was a legal posting and I followed the instructions perfectly. I even bought a separate phone and AT&T for it, but it didn't work. And I will just finish off by singing something that I composed for this meeting. How about that? Okay. How are things in Trinidad? Do the people know it's paradise? Breathing in the fresh and healthy air that we share, with others visiting from a noisy world. Trinidad's a pearl, and the creek that gives us water, and the fog and redwood trees, they keep our population safe far. Oh, with ease, keep our Trinidad natural, if you please.
And it's good to know we have all kinds of characters in Trinidad. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victoria.
All right.
All right.
We're about finished with the meeting, so we're just done with all the main discussion items. We have a future agenda item. So do we have anybody with future agenda item that we want to make sure gets on the next in the June agenda? I know we do want to come back to the SDR issue, so let's make sure that's on there. Is there anything else that any of the councilmen would like to see on the next agenda? I don't see a lot of people jumping in on this.
And not offhand.
I would like maybe just an update on what kind of exploration is done for trail maintenance or repair for as per the recommendations from the Trails Committee.
David, do you have something you wanted to add? I thought, okay. Richard?
No.
Okay, and I think I'm all set. So Eli, do you need anything else? You're ready to go. Oh.
Someone, Ashley?
Ashley, did you want to add something?
I did have a question, and I'm not 100% sure if this is about you guys handle this, but a community garden that is open, not at the school because it's closed, but something that everybody could access, you know, just getting food that they need for their kids or whatever needs it in the area.
I have a community garden next door to my home that was very functional last year. We even had a beehive. I'm trying to get it going again, and I'll talk to the homeowner, but it's something that, you know, the children could come down and experience too and get educated. It's something I'm kind of working on the side too.
Okay, and I will definitely volunteer my time.
We'll get that. We'll get that on a future agenda. Thank you, Ashley. All right, anybody else? All right, I think we're ready to adjourn. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with us all evening, and especially Aaron, who just kept us going. Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
He peed on the bed.
Are you still there, Victoria?
Yeah, I sure am. My whole television has gone out. I don't know what's going on here.
Hey, no, this is Gabe.
Oh, boy.
This is Gabe. That was amazing.
Oh, who is talking to me? Because the television literally went blank and I can't make it work. This is Suddenling for you. Go ahead. Who am I talking to? Oh, Steve. Steve, I tried for 3/4 of an hour with my new phone, the stupid AT&T cell phone I bought separately for this, and I could not get into that meeting no matter what I did. Even with AT&T coming on the line, trying to patch me on, I was completely muted. Nobody could hear me. This went on and on. I could not make any comments whatsoever. I could not even read the Moonstone Winery guys thing, which Dave did not read during the water advisory selection of the counselors, okay? He had promised him to read it, but he didn't. And that was the one that nominated Tom Davies, who so graciously bowed out of that. So now what do we have, Grover and Clompus?
Yes. Hey, Victoria, here's what I'll do. I want to call you back on your cell phone line right now from the office, okay? And I'll talk to you more.
Yeah, I'm actually on my Verizon phone, which was the one I didn't want to use, but you know, I'm on it right now.
You were amazing. That just made my night.
Thank you. I just had to do that because.
Well, Victoria, it was great.
Who is this on the line?
Ashley.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Ashley.
Oh, Ashley, you're on the line.
Yes, I am.
Anyway, party line now all of a sudden after the city.
You sung my child to bed, so thank you.
We'll talk to Ashley. You can give me a call. I heard you talk to Angela maybe today or yesterday, but I'd love to talk to you more about getting involved.
Perfect.
All right.
Well, have a good one, guys.
All right. Good night.
Bye.